The bullet tore through Marcus Williams' shoulder before he even realized he'd stepped between a loaded gun and a woman he'd never met. Blood bloomed across his work shirt, the only clean one he owned, as Sarah Morrison's scream echoed through the concrete parking garage. Her ex-husband's finger was already squeezing the trigger for a second shot when Marcus saw his daughter Emma's face flash before his eyes. He thought about her shoelaces, the ones he'd tied that morning in their cramped apartment. He thought about the rent he couldn't pay. He thought, "This is how I die, saving a stranger." But before you find out if Marcus survives, I need you to do something for me. Watch this story until the very end, because what happens next will restore your faith in second chances. And comment below with your city name so I can see how far this story has traveled across the world. The weight of Thursdays. Marcus Williams had been awake for 19 hours, and Thursday wasn't even done with him yet. His hands, calloused, paint-stained, perpetually dry, gripped the steering wheel of his '04 Silverado as it coughed and wheezed through downtown traffic. The check engine light had been on for 6 months. The passenger door only opened from the outside. The radio was stuck on a gospel station that played nothing but static after 6 p.m., and it was 6:47. But the truck was his, paid in full, and in a life where Marcus owned almost nothing outright that mattered. "Daddy, you're doing the face again." Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. Emma, 7 years old, with cornrows her grandmother had braided last Sunday, sat in her booster seat with a juice box and a worried expression that made her look 30. "What face, baby girl?" "The one where your eyebrows get all scrunchy and you forget to breathe." Marcus forced his features to relax, forced air into his lungs. "I'm breathing C in and out. All good." "You're thinking about money." Sometimes Marcus forgot that Emma saw everything. That poverty made children grow up too fast, made them fluent in the language of adult worry before they'd even lost their first tooth. "I'm thinking," Marcus said carefully, "about what we're going to have for dinner. I'm thinking maybe we stop by that taco truck on 5th, the one with the good salsa verde." Emma's eyes lit up, then dimmed. "Is it expensive?" "Baby, don't you worry about. Because Mrs. Chen says we still owe for last month, and I heard you on the phone with the electric people, and I can eat cereal for dinner, Daddy. I don't mind. I like cereal." "Emma." Marcus pulled into the garage beneath the Morrison Tower, where he'd been contracted for drywall work on the 14th floor. "We're getting tacos. Real tacos, with extra cheese." "Okay." She nodded, but she'd already gone quiet, already retreated into that place where kids go when they're trying to be good, trying not to be a burden. Marcus hated that place. The parking garage was nearly empty. Most of the office workers had fled by 5 p.m., but Marcus's work crew didn't get the luxury of banking hours. They worked until the job was done, until the contractor said they could leave, until the foreman stopped finding reasons to dock their pay. "I'll be quick," Marcus promised, unbuckling Emma from her seat. 10 minutes tops. Just gotta grab my drill from the work site." Emma slipped her small hand into his. "Can I see the building? The tall part?" "Baby, it's just offices. Bunch of people in suits typing on computers." "But it touches the sky." Marcus smiled despite his exhaustion. "Next time, okay. When we've got daylight and I'm not half dead." They walked through the garage, Emma's light-up sneakers flashing pink with every step toward the service elevator. Marcus was mentally cataloging his bank account, $47 the rent, due in 4 days, $1,200, and the fact that his daughter needed new shoes because these ones were already too small when he heard it. A woman's voice, sharp, desperate. "David, please, just listen to me." Marcus stopped walking. Emma's hand tightened around his. "Stay here," Marcus whispered, guiding Emma behind a concrete pillar. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." "Daddy." "I mean it, Em." Marcus moved toward the voices, his construction boots silent against the polished garage floor. He rounded a row of expensive sedans, BMWs, Teslas, one Maserati that probably cost more than Marcus would earn in 5 years, and saw them. A woman in a business suit, her back pressed against a Mercedes, her hands raised in surrender. A man tall, well-dressed, unraveling, standing 3 feet away. And between them, a gun. The moment, everything changed. The woman was beautiful. In that untouchable way, rich people often were perfect posture, perfect hair, perfect terror, barely contained behind a mask of composure. Sarah Morrison. Though Marcus didn't know her name yet. CEO of Morrison Industries. Though Marcus didn't know that either. All Marcus knew was that her eyes were wide and wet, and the man with the gun was shaking. "You don't get to do this," the man David was saying. His voice cracked on every third word. "You don't get to take my son and just erase me like I'm nothing." "I never said you were nothing," Sarah said, and Marcus was struck by how steady her voice was, how she was negotiating for her life, the same way she probably negotiated contracts in boardrooms 20 stories above them. "Jake needs his father. I've never disputed that. But you can't show up at his school, David. You can't." "I can't what? See my own kid, watch him play soccer." "That's what the restraining order says, Sarah. That I can't be within 500 feet of my own flesh and blood. You threatened me. You broke into my house. To get my stuff." The gun rose 6 inches. Sarah flinched. Marcus's heart was a war drum. "Call the police," his brain screamed. "This isn't your fight. You have a daughter 20 feet away. You have $47 and 4 days until you're homeless. You cannot afford to be a hero." But Marcus had never been good at math when it came to doing the right thing. "Hey." Marcus stepped into the open hands raised voice, calm. "Hey man, let's take a breath here." David spun toward him, gun swinging wild. Sarah gasped. "Who the hell are you?" David demanded. "Nobody," Marcus said truthfully. "Just a guy who works construction. Name's Marcus. And I can see you're going through something here, brother, but..." "Don't call me brother. You don't know me." "You're right, I don't." Marcus took a small step forward. "But I know what it's like to feel like the world's taken everything from you. I know what it's like to be so angry you can't see straight. And I know..." "Another step, that whatever you're about to do here, it's not going to bring you peace." David's hand was trembling so violently, the gun looked like it might go off by accident. "She took my son. I heard you, and that's gotta hurt like hell." Marcus kept his voice low even. The same voice he used when Emma had nightmares. "But you pull that trigger, you lose Jake forever. You know that, right, prison? Maybe worse. You'll never coach his soccer team. Never see him graduate. Never..." "Shut up." David's eyes were red streaming. You don't understand." "I'm a single dad," Marcus said. "My daughter's 7. Her mama left when she was 2 and I've been doing it alone ever since. So yeah, man, I understand. I understand that being separated from your kid feels like dying. I understand that some days you wake up and the rage is so big, you don't know where to put it." Sarah was watching Marcus with an expression he couldn't read. Hope, maybe. Or disbelief that a stranger was negotiating for her life in a parking garage at 7 p.m. on a Thursday. "But here's the thing," Marcus continued. "Your boy Jake, right? He needs you alive. He needs you free. He needs you to be the man who shows up even when it's hard. Even when his mama's got lawyers and restraining orders. You be that man, David. You be the father who loves him enough to walk away from this." For 5 impossible seconds, Marcus thought it might actually work. David lowered the gun 3 inches. Sarah exhaled, and then David's phone rang. The first drop of blood. The ringtone, some generic pop song, shattered the fragile peace like a grenade. David jerked, startled. The gun rose again. "Don't answer it," Marcus said quickly. "Just..." But David was already fumbling for his phone with his free hand, his eyes never leaving Sarah. He glanced at the screen and his face did something terrible. "It's my lawyer," he said. "Calling to tell me the judge denied my motion. Calling to tell me I lost. David, I lost." His voice bounced off the concrete walls, feral and broken. "I lost my wife. I lost my house. I lost my son. And now I've got nothing." The gun swung toward Sarah. Marcus didn't think, didn't calculate, didn't consider the $47 or the daughter behind the pillar or the fact that heroes in real life don't get Hollywood endings. He just moved. One step. Two. Throwing himself between the bullet and the stranger. The gunshot was so loud, Emma would later say she felt it in her bones. The pain was a white-hot comet that tore through Marcus's left shoulder and exited somewhere near his collarbone. He staggered, but didn't fall, not yet. And through the ringing in his ears, he heard Sarah screaming and David shouting, and Emma. "Oh, God!" Emma was crying. "Daddy!" Marcus turned instinct overriding agony and saw his daughter running toward him, her light-up shoes flashing pink, pink, pink like a heartbeat. No, stay back." But David was faster than Marcus expected. The gun was gone, dropped maybe or holstered, and now there was a knife. Because of course there was a knife, because men like David came prepared for violence, came dressed for war. Sarah moved. Marcus would replay this moment 1,000 times in the hospital, trying to understand how a woman in 4-inch heels and a pencil skirt moved like a trained fighter. Later he'd learned she'd taken self-defense classes after the divorce. Later he'd learned she kept a tire iron in her car for exactly this reason. But in the moment all Marcus saw was Sarah Morrison swinging a 2-foot length of steel like a baseball bat connecting with David's wrist with a crack that echoed through the garage. The knife clattered to the ground. David howled. And then, finally, impossibly, security arrived. 2 guards in ill-fitting uniforms sprinted around the corner radios, squawking hands on their holsters. One of them was shouting something about police being en route. The other was yelling at David to get on the ground. David got on the ground. Sarah dropped the tire iron and ran to Marcus. Emma got there first. The world goes soft. "Daddy? Daddy, you're bleeding." Marcus wanted to tell his daughter he was fine, wanted to wipe the tears from her face and promise her that everything was okay, that he'd been through worse, that a little bullet wound wasn't going to keep him down. But the world was tilting. His shoulder was on fire, and when he opened his mouth, all that came out was, "I need you to be brave, baby girl." Then his knees gave out and the polished garage floor rushed up to meet him. The last thing Marcus heard before the darkness swallowed him whole was Sarah's voice, urgent, commanding, stripped of its corporate polish, screaming at the security guards to call an ambulance now, to stop standing there like idiots and help him. And then, nothing. When Marcus woke up, the world was white and soft and smelled like antiseptic. A hospital. He'd been in enough of them, Emma's birth. His mother's final days, his own broken wrist from a fall off scaffolding 2 years back, to recognize the rhythm of machines, beeping the whisper of nurses' shoes on linoleum, the particular quality of fluorescent light that made everything look either holy or hopeless, depending on your perspective. Marcus's perspective at the moment was obstructed by the 7-year-old girl asleep on his chest. Emma, alive, safe, still wearing her light-up sneakers. Marcus's good arm, the one that didn't feel like it had been run through a wood chipper, wrapped around his daughter instinctively. She stirred, lifting her head, and when she saw he was awake, her face did something that made Marcus's heart hurt worse than the bullet wound. "You're okay," she whispered, and it wasn't a question. It was a prayer answered. "I'm okay, baby. You got shot." "Yeah." "Because of the lady?" "Yeah." Emma's lower lip trembled. "I thought you were going to die like Grandma." Marcus pulled her closer, ignoring the screaming protest from his shoulder. "Takes more than a bullet to get rid of me, Em. I'm too stubborn." "That's what the doctor said. He said you were lucky. He said 2 inches to the right and—" "Hey." Marcus tilted her chin up, so she had to look at him. "But it wasn't 2 inches to the right. I'm here. You're here. We're good." Emma nodded, but her eyes were still haunted, still carrying the weight of watching her father bleed out on a parking garage floor. Before Marcus could figure out what to say, before he could find words big enough to cover the trauma of what his daughter had witnessed. The hospital room door opened, and Sarah Morrison walked in. The debt. She looked different than she had in the garage. Smaller somehow, though she was still tall and elegant in that way that came from good genes and better money. Her business suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a cashmere sweater. Her hair was down. And her eyes. Her eyes were red. "I'm sorry," she said immediately before Marcus could speak. "I'm so sorry. I know visiting hours are over, but I told them I was family and I needed to see—" She stopped mid-sentence, her voice cracking. Marcus had the strangest urge to comfort her, this woman. He didn't know this stranger whose life he'd saved on what was supposed to be a regular Thursday. "It's okay," Marcus said. "I'm okay." Sarah laughed, but it came out wrong, came out like a sob. "You're not okay. You took a bullet meant for me. You—" She pressed her hand to her mouth, composing herself with visible effort. "I'm Sarah Morrison. And you're Marcus Williams. And you have a daughter named Emma who told the entire ER staff that her daddy is a superhero." Emma, who had been watching Sarah with intense curiosity, perked up. "He is a superhero. He saved you." Sarah smiled, and it was the saddest smile Marcus had ever seen. "He did. He absolutely did." She crossed to the bed, and Marcus noticed she was carrying something, a stuffed animal, a rabbit with floppy ears and a blue ribbon around its neck. "This is for you," Sarah said, handing it to Emma. "I have a son, Jake. He's 8. And when I told him what your daddy did, he wanted you to have his favorite rabbit, for being brave." Emma accepted the rabbit like it was made of gold. "What's his name?" "Hopper. I'll take good care of him. I know you will." Sarah turned back to Marcus, and her expression shifted, became businesslike, became the face of a woman who'd built an empire from scratch and didn't apologize for taking up space. "The police want to talk to you," she said, "when you're feeling up to it. David, my ex-husband, he's been arrested. Attempted murder assault with a deadly weapon, a dozen other charges. He's not making bail." Marcus nodded. "Good. And Sarah took a breath. "I need to tell you something. I need you to understand what you did tonight." "I didn't do anything special," Marcus said. "Anyone would have—" "No." Sarah's voice was sharp. "No, Marcus. Anyone would have called the police and stayed hidden. Anyone would have protected their own child and let me handle it myself. Anyone would have done the smart thing, the safe thing. But you didn't." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. Sarah sat down in the chair beside his bed, the one Emma had probably been occupying for hours, and folded her hands in her lap like she was at a board meeting. "I've been researching you," she said. Marcus blinked. "You've been what?" "Don't look at me like that. I'm thorough. It's how I've stayed alive in business." Sarah's smile was wry. "Marcus Anthony Williams, 32 years old, single father, construction worker for Apex Contracting, no criminal record. Spotless credit until 18 months ago when your mother got sick and you took out loans to cover her hospice care." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You had no right." "I had every right," Sarah interrupted. "You saved my life. You took a bullet for a stranger. The least I could do was figure out who you are." Emma, sensing tension, hugged Hopper the rabbit tighter. Marcus forced himself to breathe. "What do you want?" "To help you." "I don't need charity." "It's not charity." Sarah leaned forward, her gaze intense. "Marcus, I run a company worth $3 billion. I have security teams, lawyers, bodyguards trained by the Secret Service. And yet the person who saved my life tonight was a construction worker with $47 in his bank account who could have walked away but didn't." Marcus's face burned. "You don't know what's in my bank account." "I do, actually. You talked about it with the paramedics. You were worried about the ambulance bill." "Stop investigating me." "I can't." Sarah's voice softened. Because I owe you a debt I can never repay. And I don't take debts lightly. The machines beeped. Emma yawned. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse laughed at something a doctor said. "What are you proposing?" Marcus asked finally. Sarah smiled. "Let me take care of Emma while you recover. Let me make sure your rent gets paid, and your daughter has food, and you don't lose everything because you were a good man on the wrong Thursday." "No." "Marcus." I said no. He tried to sit up straighter and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through his shoulder. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't take handouts. I work for what I have. That's how I was raised." "Then work for me." Marcus stared at her. "I'm serious." Sarah continued. "I need a new head of corporate security. My last one retired. The guy who replaced him lasted 6 months before he quit. And tonight I realized that all the military training and fancy credentials in the world don't mean anything if the person doesn't have heart. I don't know anything about corporate security. You knew how to talk down an armed man. You knew how to assess a threat and respond. You knew how to protect someone without hesitation." Sarah's eyes gleamed. "That's not something you can teach Marcus. That's instinct." "I have a daughter. I can't bring her." Sarah said it like it was obvious. "I have a guest house. 3 bedrooms, full kitchen, more space than you've probably had in years. You and Emma can stay there while you train, while you heal, while you figure out if this is something you want." Emma's head snapped up. "We'd live with you." Sarah turned to her. "You'd live in a house on my property, yes, with a yard, and a swing set, and Jake would love to have a friend nearby." "I like swings," Emma said quietly. Marcus felt the world tilting again, but this time it wasn't blood loss. It was the vertiginous sensation of his entire life pivoting on a single moment, a single choice. "I can't pay you back," he said. "I don't want you to pay me back," Sarah replied. "I want you to let me do this, for you, for Emma, because you gave me my life, Marcus, and the least I can do is give you a chance at a better one." Emma looked up at her father with those wide, hopeful eyes that had been breaking his heart since the day she was born. "Please, Daddy," she whispered. "Can we say yes?" And Marcus Williams, stubborn, proud, terrified, realized he was out of reasons to refuse. "Okay," he said. "Okay." Sarah's smile could have powered the entire hospital. The night shift. Sarah left an hour later, after extracting promises that Marcus would rest, that he'd let the doctors monitor him overnight, that he wouldn't try to discharge himself early to avoid the bill. "I'm covering it," she'd said at the door. "The surgery, the hospital, stay all of it. And before you argue, consider it workman's comp. You were injured protecting an executive of Morrison Industries. That makes it a business expense." Marcus wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling him under, and Emma had finally fallen asleep for real, curled against his side with Hopper tucked under her chin. "Thank you," he'd managed. Sarah had just nodded and slipped away. Now it was past midnight, and Marcus couldn't sleep. The morphine made him floaty but not unconscious, made his thoughts drift in strange directions. He kept replaying the parking garage. The gun, the knife, Sarah's face, Emma's scream. What if I'd died, he thought. What would have happened to Emma? His mother was gone. Emma's mother was God knew where. Marcus had no siblings, no safety net. If that bullet had been 2 inches to the right, his daughter would have ended up in the system, bouncing between foster homes, losing the only parent she'd ever known. The thought made him nauseous. "You awake?" Marcus turned his head carefully, because his shoulder was a landscape of pain, and found a nurse standing in the doorway. She was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and scrubs covered in cartoon cats. "Can't sleep," Marcus admitted. "Adrenaline," the nurse said, checking his IV. "Your body's still processing the trauma. It'll take a few days for your nervous system to settle." "Yeah." She studied him for a moment. "You're the guy who saved Sarah Morrison." It wasn't a question. "Word travels fast," Marcus said. "Small hospital. Big news." The nurse smiled. She's a good woman, you know. Donated a whole wing 2 years ago. Funds scholarships for nursing students. She's got a reputation for taking care of people who take care of her. Marcus thought about the job offer, the guest house, the promise of a better life. She's very generous, he said carefully. She's also very smart, the nurse replied. And if she sees something in you, it's because it's there. Don't talk yourself out of it. Before Marcus could respond, the nurse adjusted his blanket, smiled at sleeping Emma, and left as quietly as she'd arrived. Alone again, Marcus stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine a future where he wasn't drowning. Where Emma had a yard and a swing set. Where he worked a job that didn't destroy his body. Where Thursdays didn't feel like survival. It was hard to imagine. But for the first time in years, it wasn't impossible. Friday morning. Marcus woke to sunlight and the smell of pancakes. For a disoriented moment, he thought he was back in his apartment, thought his mother was in the kitchen making breakfast like she used to before cancer ate her from the inside out. Then the pain in his shoulder reminded him where he was, and the machine started beeping, and reality snapped back into focus. Emma was gone. Panic flooded his system before logic caught up. The blankets were folded where she'd been sleeping. Hopper the rabbit was propped on the chair, and there was a note in child's handwriting on the bedside table. Daddy, I went to get breakfast with Jake and his mom. Be back soon. Love you. Emma. Marcus exhaled. 15 minutes later, the door opened and Emma tumbled in, followed by Sarah and a boy Marcus assumed was Jake. The kid was all limbs and freckles, wearing a soccer jersey and carrying a stack of pancakes on a hospital tray like it was a sacred offering. We brought you food, Emma announced. So I see. Jake approached shyly. My mom said you got shot saving her. I did. That's really cool. I mean, not cool that you got hurt, but cool that you were brave. Marcus smiled despite himself. Thanks, buddy. Sarah hung back, letting the kids chatter, but her eyes met Marcus's over their heads, and something passed between them, an understanding maybe, or the beginning of one. This is my life now, Marcus thought. This is the new Thursday. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't sound so bad. The kids were showing Marcus their drawings, crude stick figures, depicting last night's drama with questionable accuracy, when a doctor arrived to discuss discharge plans. Marcus was medically stable, but he'd need physical therapy follow-up appointments, someone to help him with daily tasks while his shoulder healed. I'll handle it, Sarah said before Marcus could panic about logistics. The doctor nodded like this was expected. You'll want to avoid heavy lifting for at least 6 weeks. No driving for 2 weeks. And you'll need to come back in 5 days to have the stitches checked. 6 weeks without working meant 6 weeks without income. 2 weeks without driving meant relying on others. 5 days to heal meant stop spiraling. Sarah murmured quiet enough that only Marcus heard. He glanced at her. I wasn't. You were. I can see it on your face. She smiled. You're thinking about money and logistics and how you're going to survive. But that's not your problem anymore, Marcus. Your only job right now is to heal. I don't know how to do that. Then learn. The drive. Sarah's car was a BMW X5, black and gleaming, and probably worth more than Marcus's entire life savings. Emma was vibrating with excitement in the back seat, asking Jake a million questions about his school, his friends, his favorite video games. Jake answered patiently with the air of someone used to being interviewed by adults. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, his arm in a sling, watching Houston scroll past the window. They were heading north, away from the cramped apartment he shared with Emma, away from the neighborhood where gunshots were a Tuesday night soundtrack and the corner store got robbed twice a month. Where exactly do you live? Marcus asked. River Oaks, Sarah said. Marcus nearly choked. River Oaks was where oil tycoons and tech billionaires built mansions. where the average home cost $7 million and the lawns were maintained by teams of gardeners. "I can't." "You can," Sarah interrupted. "And you will, because I'm not giving you a choice, Marcus. You saved my life. You're going to let me return the favor." In the back seat, Emma squealed as Jake showed her something on his phone. Their laughter filled the car like music. Marcus closed his eyes and surrendered. The estate. The Morrison estate was obscene. There was no other word for it. The main house was a sprawling colonial with white columns and black shutters, surrounded by oak trees older than Texas itself. The driveway was cobblestone. The fountain in front was marble. The gate they'd driven through had actual security cameras and an intercom system. But it was the guest house that made Marcus's chest tighten. It sat at the back of the property, tucked among magnolia trees, with a wraparound porch and flower boxes under the windows. 3 bedrooms, Sarah had said. Full kitchen. More space than you've had in years. She hadn't mentioned it was beautiful. "Home sweet home," Sarah said, pulling into the driveway. Emma was already unbuckling, already sprinting toward the porch with Jake. Marcus climbed out slower, his shoulder throbbing, his brain struggling to process the sudden shift in altitude from poverty to this. "I had my housekeeper stock the fridge," Sarah said, coming to stand beside him. "And there's a room upstairs that I thought Emma might like. It has built-in bookshelves and a window seat. But if you want to rearrange anything, just say the word." Marcus couldn't speak. Sarah touched his good arm gently. "Hey, you okay?" "I don't..." His voice cracked. "I don't deserve this." "You took a bullet for me, Marcus. You deserve everything." Inside the house was even better. Hardwood floors, crown molding, furniture that looked expensive but comfortable. A kitchen with granite countertops and appliances that actually worked. A living room with a fireplace and a TV bigger than any Marcus had ever owned. Emma and Jake were already upstairs, their voices echoing through the hallway as they explored. "There's a washer and dryer in the laundry room," Sarah was saying, "and the Wi-Fi password is on the fridge. And if you need anything, groceries, toiletries, whatever, just text me. Or walk over to the main house. My door's always open." Marcus turned to look at her. Really look at her. This woman who'd had a gun pointed at her last night and was now giving him keys to a house he couldn't afford to rent in 1,000 years. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Sarah met his gaze. "Because I've spent the last 3 years building walls, Marcus. Protecting myself. Keeping people at arm's length. And last night you reminded me that there are still good people in the world. People who help strangers. People who risk everything for nothing in return." She paused. "And maybe," she added softly, "I'm tired of being alone." Before Marcus could respond, Emma came thundering down the stairs. "Daddy, there's a treehouse in the backyard. Can we go see it? Please, please, please." Marcus looked at Sarah. Sarah smiled. "Go," she said. "Explore. I'll be at the main house if you need me." And then she was gone, walking across the lawn in her expensive jeans, leaving Marcus and Emma standing in a house that felt like a dream. "Is this real?" Emma whispered. Marcus pulled his daughter close with his good arm. "Yeah, baby, I think it is." They spent the rest of the afternoon exploring. The treehouse was real-equipped with a rope ladder and a telescope and cushions for stargazing. The yard had a trampoline and a garden and a path that wound through the trees. The guest house had closets bigger than their old bedroom and a bathtub deep enough to swim in. By dinner time, Emma had decided this was the best day of her life. By bedtime, Marcus was starting to believe her. The first night. Marcus tucked Emma into her new bed, a 4-poster monstrosity with a canopy and more pillows than any human needed, and kissed her forehead. "You good baby girl." "This is like a fairy tale," Emma said sleepily, "like Cinderella, but with guns." Marcus laughed despite himself. "Yeah, something like that." Do you think we can stay forever? I don't know. I want to. Emma's eyes were already closing. I like it here. I like Jake. I like his mom. Me too, Marcus admitted. Are you gonna marry her? What? No. I just met her. But she likes you. I can tell. She's being nice because I saved her life. No, Emma said with the certainty only children possess. She likes you the way people like people when they want to kiss them. Go to sleep. Emma giggled, then yawned, then drifted off with Hopper tucked under her chin. Marcus stood in the doorway for a long time, watching his daughter breathe, trying to convince himself this wasn't temporary, that Sarah Morrison wasn't going to wake up tomorrow and realize she'd made a mistake, that this house, this life, this second chance, it was real. Downstairs, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Sarah, hope you're settling in. Sleep well. Tomorrow we start planning your new future. Marcus stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then he typed back, "Thank you." Her response was immediate. "Stop thanking me. You earned this." Marcus didn't believe her, but he wanted to. And somewhere across the lawn in the main house, Sarah Morrison stood at her window and watched the lights go out in the guest house and wondered if maybe, just maybe, she'd found something she didn't know she was looking for. A protector, a partner, a second chance at family. Marcus woke to the smell of coffee he didn't make and sunlight streaming through windows he didn't recognize. For 3 disorienting seconds, he thought he'd died in that parking garage, and this was some kind of elaborate afterlife. Then his shoulders screamed in protest as he tried to sit up, and reality came crashing back. The guest house. Sarah Morrison. The job offer that felt like a fever dream. His phone said 6:47 a.m. Saturday morning. Through the bedroom window, Marcus could see the main house across the lawn, its windows still dark. The world was quiet in that particular way only money could buy, insulated from traffic noise and sirens and neighbors arguing through paper-thin walls. Marcus forced himself out of bed, navigating the unfamiliar house on muscle memory and stubbornness. His shoulder was a symphony of pain, but he'd worked construction sites with worse injuries. Pride was a hell of an anesthetic. Downstairs, he found Emma already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal and a look of pure wonder on her face. "There's 6 kinds of cereal, Daddy," she whispered, like speaking too loud might break the spell. 6. And the milk doesn't have that weird smell. Marcus's heart cracked a little. "Yeah, baby, I see that. Can I have the kind with marshmallows?" "You can have whatever you want." Emma's smile could have powered the city. Marcus was attempting to make coffee one-handed when someone knocked on the front door. Through the window, he saw Sarah standing on the porch, holding what looked like a briefcase and wearing exercise clothes that probably cost more than his truck. He opened the door. "It's not even 7. "I'm an early riser," Sarah said unapologetically. "And we have work to do. Can I come in?" Marcus stepped aside. Sarah entered like she owned the place, which technically she did, and set the briefcase on the coffee table. "Morning, Emma," she called toward the kitchen. "Morning, Miss Sarah. Your cereal is really good." Sarah smiled, then turned back to Marcus. "How's the shoulder?" "Fine." "You're lying." "Only a little." Marcus crossed to the coffee maker, which had somehow started itself. "What's in the briefcase?" "Your future." Sarah popped the latches and pulled out a thick folder. "I spent yesterday making calls. I have 3 former Secret Service agents willing to train you, 2 FBI consultants who specialize in corporate threat assessment, and a retired Marine who runs executive protection courses. They all owe me favors. They've all agreed to fast-track your education." Marcus stared at her. "You're serious about this?" "I'm always serious about business, Marcus. And you're my business now." Something about the way she said it made Marcus's chest tighten. I don't know if I can do this. You can. Sarah's voice was iron-wrapped in velvet. You talked down an armed man. You assessed a threat in seconds. You put yourself between a gun and a stranger without hesitation. That's not something I can train into someone. That's instinct. Everything else is just paperwork and tactics. I've never even fired a gun. Then we'll teach you. Sarah pulled out a schedule that looked like a military operation. Firearms training on Mondays and Thursdays. Hand-to-hand combat on Tuesdays. Threat assessment and behavioral analysis on Wednesdays. Corporate security protocols on Fridays. You'll have weekends with Emma. You'll have health insurance, dental vision, and a salary that starts at $90,000 a year. Marcus almost dropped his coffee. 90. That's entry level for executive protection. Once you're fully trained and certified, we'll renegotiate. Sarah's eyes gleamed. I take care of the people who take care of me, Marcus. It's how I built my company. It's how I stay alive. Emma appeared in the doorway, cereal bowl in hand. Daddy's gonna be a bodyguard. If he agrees, Sarah said. Emma looked at her father with those wide, hopeful eyes that had been running his life since the day she was born. You should say yes, Daddy. You're already good at protecting people. Marcus felt the last of his resistance crumble. Okay, I'll do it. Sarah's smile was triumphant. Good. We start Monday. What Marcus didn't say, what he couldn't quite articulate yet, was that he was terrified. Terrified of failing, of proving Sarah wrong, of discovering he wasn't the man she thought he was. But he'd spent 7 years being terrified of rent and medical bills, and whether Emma had enough to eat. At least, this fear came with health insurance. Sarah left 20 minutes later after extracting promises that Marcus would rest through the weekend, that he'd let his shoulder heal, that he wouldn't try to repay her with labor or pride, or anything except his best effort come Monday morning. Emma had already disappeared upstairs to video call Jake, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and a coffee maker that probably cost more than his monthly rent used to. His phone buzzed. A text from his former crew boss at Apex Contracting. Jenkins? Heard you got shot. You coming back to work or what? Marcus stared at the message for a long time. 3 years he'd worked for Jenkins. 3 years of 12-hour days and wages barely above minimum, and being treated like he was disposable. 3 years of breaking his body for a man who'd never once asked about Emma, never once offered a sick day, never once saw Marcus as anything more than a warm body who could hang drywall. He typed, "Not coming back." Found something better. Jenkins's response was immediate. "Your loss. Good luck finding another job without a reference." Marcus deleted the thread and blocked the number. Some bridges deserve to burn. The weekend passed in a strange haze of normalcy and surrealism. Emma and Jake became inseparable building forts in the treehouse and staging elaborate battles with action figures. Sarah appeared periodically bringing groceries, checking on Marcus's shoulder, sitting on the porch with iced tea while the kids played. They didn't talk about anything heavy, just small things. Emma's favorite subjects in school. Jake's soccer schedule. The magnolia trees that were Sarah's grandmother's favorite. But Marcus felt something shifting between them, some unspoken understanding that they were both lonely people who'd been pretending not to be, and maybe, just maybe, they didn't have to pretend anymore. Sunday night after Emma was asleep, Marcus sat on the porch and tried to imagine his future. 6 months ago, he'd been measuring his life in shifts and paychecks, in Emma's growth spurts and the slow erosion of his savings. Now he was sitting in a house worth more than he'd earn in 10 years, employed by a billionaire, training to become something he'd never dreamed of being. Can't sleep. Marcus turned to find Sarah walking across the lawn barefoot, wearing pajama pants and an oversized hoodie that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Too much quiet, Marcus admitted. I'm used to sirens. Sarah laughed and sat down beside him. I grew up in a house smaller than this guest house. 4 siblings, 1 bathroom. I didn't experience real quiet until I bought this place. You miss it. The noise. Sometimes. Sarah pulled her knees to her chest. Mostly I miss the simplicity. When your biggest worry is whether your brother used all the hot water. Now your worries include armed ex-husbands. Among other things. Sarah's voice went quiet. David and I were married for 10 years. I thought I knew him. Thought he was just ambitious, just driven. I didn't see the anger until it was too late. Until Jake started flinching when his father raised his voice. Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he just waited. I filed for divorce 2 years ago, Sarah continued. Full custody of Jake. David fought it, of course. Claimed I was an unfit mother, that I cared more about my company than my son. It got ugly, really ugly. And then 6 months ago he started showing up. At Jake's school, at my office, at restaurants where I was having business dinners. The restraining order didn't stop him. It just made him angrier. You should have had security. I did, I do. But they're not always fast enough. They're not always... She stopped, her voice cracking. They're not always willing to step between a bullet and a stranger. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the expensive clothes and the perfect composure to the woman underneath. The mother who'd watched her ex-husband point a gun at her. The CEO who'd had to swing a tire iron to save herself. The human being who was still processing trauma while trying to hold her world together. You're stronger than you think, Marcus said. Sarah's laugh was bitter. I froze, Marcus. When David pulled that gun, I froze. I was ready to die. And then you... She shook her head. You weren't even supposed to be there. You were just picking up a drill. And you walked into hell for someone you didn't know. Emma was watching. I couldn't let her see me do nothing. Most men would have done nothing. Then most men are cowards. Sarah turned to look at him, and something passed between them in the darkness, something electric and terrifying and inevitable. I'm glad you're here, she said softly. Me too, Marcus admitted. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to cicadas and the distant hum of the city. Eventually, Sarah stood stretched and headed back toward the main house. But at the edge of the lawn, she paused and looked back. Marcus. Yeah. Don't let Monday scare you. You're going to be great at this. Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness and the magnolia trees, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and a future that felt less impossible than it had 24 hours ago. Monday morning arrived like a freight train. Marcus woke at 5 a.m. to an alarm he didn't remember setting and a text from Sarah with an address 40 minutes away. Emma was still asleep, curled around Hopper the rabbit, her face peaceful in the pre-dawn light. Marcus left a note on her nightstand. Gone to training. Sarah's housekeeper will make you breakfast. Love you, baby girl. And drove into the city in Sarah's borrowed BMW, his shoulder throbbing with every gear shift. The address led to a nondescript warehouse in an industrial district, the kind of place where people asked questions if you looked too closely. Marcus parked and checked his phone. 6:03 a.m. He was 3 minutes late. Inside the warehouse had been converted into a training facility, shooting ranges, padded sparring areas, obstacle courses that looked designed by sadists. And standing in the center of it all was a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite and disappointment. You, Marcus Williams. The man's voice could strip paint. Yes, sir. I'm Sergeant Major Dale Reeves, retired Marine Corps, 22 years of service, 3 tours in Afghanistan, and exactly 0 patience for excuses. Sarah Morrison says you've got potential. I say you've got 2 months to prove her right or prove her wrong. We clear? Crystal. Good. Drop and give me 50. Marcus blinked. My shoulder is an excuse. 49. 48. 47. Marcus dropped. His shoulder screamed. He did the push-ups anyway, one-armed, modified with Reeves counting down in that voice that made men confess to crimes they didn't commit. By 30, Marcus's arm was shaking. By 20, he was tasting copper. By 10, he was running on spite and stubbornness. Not bad, Reeves said when Marcus finally collapsed. For a civilian. Now get up. We've got work to do." The next 4 hours were a masterclass in humility. Reeves taught Marcus how to stand, how to scan a room, how to identify threats in a crowd. They covered basic firearms, safety, tactical positioning, crisis, de-escalation. Marcus absorbed it all like a man dying of thirst, even as his body protested and his shoulder turned into liquid fire. At 10 a.m., Reeves called a break. "You're rough," he said, tossing Marcus a water bottle. "But you've got good instincts. Sarah wasn't lying about that." Marcus gulped water. "She told you what happened. She told me you took a bullet for her. That's all I needed to know." Reeves studied him with the intensity of a man trained to read people. Most folks who come through here, they're in it for the paycheck or the prestige. They want to tell people, their bodyguards want to feel important. But you're here because you don't know how not to protect people. Is that a good thing? In this line of work, it's everything. Reeves's expression softened fractionally. "But it'll also get you killed if you're not careful. You can't save everyone, Williams. You try, you'll burn out. Or worse." Marcus thought about Emma, about the life he was building, about Sarah and Jake and this impossible second chance. "I'll be careful," he promised. "See that you are." Training resumed. By noon, Marcus could field strip a Glock blindfolded. By 2, he could identify 12 different types of security threats. By 4, he was so exhausted he could barely stand. But Reeves kept pushing, kept testing, kept finding the limits of Marcus's endurance, and then demanding more. Finally, mercifully, the day ended. "Tomorrow 6 a.m., Reeves said. "Don't be late." Marcus drove home in a daze, his body one giant bruise, his mind overflowing with information. When he pulled into the guest house driveway, he found Emma and Jake playing soccer in the yard, while Sarah watched from the porch, her laptop balanced on her knees. She looked up when Marcus approached, and her expression shifted from professional to concerned in half a heartbeat. "You look like you got hit by a truck." "Feels about right." Marcus collapsed onto the porch steps. "Your guy Reeves is intense. He's the best. If you can survive his training, you can handle anything." Sarah closed her laptop. "How's the shoulder?" "Still attached? Barely." Emma came running over, soccer ball under her arm, Jake trailing behind. "Daddy, Jake's teaching me how to do bicycle kicks." "That's great, baby. Are you okay? You look sweaty." "I'm fine, just tired." Marcus forced a smile. "You having fun?" "The best Miss Sarah's housekeeper made us grilled cheese and we watched a movie, and Jake showed me his rock collection, and—" Emma stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening. "Daddy, you're bleeding." Marcus looked down. Sure enough, blood was seeping through his shirt, where the stitches had probably torn during push-ups. "It's nothing," he started to say, but Sarah was already on her feet, already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the doctor." "Sarah, it's fine. You ripped your stitches on day 1 of training Marcus. That's not fine." Her voice had that CEO edge again, the one that didn't accept arguments. "You're going to the ER, getting checked out, and then we're having a conversation about pacing yourself. I can't afford to slow down. I've only got 2 months. "You've got a lifetime," Sarah interrupted. "And you're no good to anyone if you destroy your body before you even start the job. Now get in the car." Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to explain that he'd spent his whole life pushing through pain, that rest was a luxury for people who could afford it. But Emma was looking at him with those worried eyes, and Sarah's expression brooked no disagreement, and honestly, his shoulder felt like someone had set it on fire and stomped on the ashes. "Okay," he conceded. "Okay." The ER visit took 3 hours. The doctor, a tired woman who looked like she'd seen worse, confirmed the stitches had torn, resutured the wound, and lectured Marcus about the importance of letting injuries heal. Sarah sat through the entire thing, answering emails on her phone and periodically glaring at Marcus like he was a particularly stubborn employee who needed managing. When they finally left, the sun was setting and Marcus felt like he'd been awake for 3 days straight. "You're impossible," Sarah said as they drove back. "So I've been told." "I'm serious, Marcus. You can't train like you're invincible. You're still healing. Your body needs time." "I don't have time. You said 2 months. I said we'd fast-track your training. I didn't say you had to kill yourself doing it." Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What happened today can't happen again. You need to tell Reeves about your limitations. You need to work with your body, not against it." Marcus stared out the window at Houston, sliding past lights coming on in office buildings, people heading home from jobs they hated or loved or tolerated. Normal people with normal lives. "I'm not good at asking for help," he said quietly. "I've noticed." Sarah's voice softened. "But you're going to have to learn. Because this job being responsible for someone's life, it requires trust. It requires knowing when to push and when to pull back. And it requires letting other people support you." "Is that what you're doing? Supporting me?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I'm trying to give you what you gave me. A chance." Back at the estate, Emma and Jake had fallen asleep on the couch in the main house, tangled together like puppies, a movie playing on the massive TV. Sarah's housekeeper, a kind-faced woman named Maria, was cleaning up dinner dishes in the kitchen. "I fed them," Maria said. "Hope that's okay." "More than okay," Marcus replied. "Thank you. Emma's a sweetheart. She helped me make cookies." Maria smiled. "You've got a good kid, Mr. Williams." "I know." Marcus carried Emma back to the guest house, her head heavy on his good shoulder, her breath warm against his neck. He tucked her into bed, still wearing her clothes, too exhausted to wrestle her into pajamas, and kissed her forehead. "Love you, Daddy," she mumbled half asleep. "Love you too, baby girl." Downstairs, Marcus found Sarah standing in his kitchen, heating up leftovers Maria had apparently packed for him. "You don't have to," he started. "I know." Sarah didn't turn around. "But you need to eat, and I need to make sure you actually do it. So sit." Marcus sat. They ate in silence, some kind of chicken pasta that was probably restaurant quality, but tasted like cardboard to Marcus's exhausted palate. Sarah kept stealing glances at him, her expression unreadable. "What?" Marcus finally asked. "I'm trying to figure you out." "Not much to figure." "I disagree." Sarah set down her fork. "You're a single father who works construction, but quotes philosophy. You've got $47 in your bank account, but you dress your daughter in clean clothes every day. You took a bullet for a stranger and then tried to refuse help healing from it. You're a walking contradiction, Marcus Williams." "I'm just a guy trying to survive." "No." Sarah's eyes were intense. "You're a man trying to be good in a world that punishes goodness. And I think that's the rarest thing I've ever seen." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to respond to being seen so completely by someone who should have been a stranger. So he just looked at her. This woman who'd hired men with guns to protect her, but felt safest around a construction worker with a hero complex. "Thank you," he said finally, "for all of this, for believing in me when I don't even believe in myself." "You will," Sarah promised. "Give it time." She left an hour later, after making Marcus promise to rest, to take his pain medication, to call if he needed anything. And Marcus sat alone in his borrowed house, eating leftovers he didn't deserve, trying to understand how his life had changed so completely in less than a week. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Reeves. Sarah told me about your shoulder. You should have said something. Tomorrow we focus on strategy and assessment. No physical training until you're cleared by a doctor. And Williams. Don't be a hero on my watch. Heroes get other people killed." Marcus stared at the message, then typed back, "Understood, Sergeant." The response was immediate. "It's just Reeves. We're not in the Corps anymore." Marcus smiled despite his exhaustion and fell asleep on the couch, still wearing his bloody shirt, dreaming of a future where he was more than just a man who survived. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of training exhaustion and gradual transformation. Reeves proved to be a relentless teacher, pushing Marcus to his limits while respecting his healing shoulder. Marcus learned to shoot with precision, to read body language, to think 3 steps ahead of potential threats. He studied corporate espionage, kidnapping protocols, crisis management. He sparred with former FBI agents and learned hand-to-hand combat from a woman who'd protected 3 presidents. And slowly and possibly, he started to believe he could actually do this. Emma thrived in ways Marcus had never imagined possible. She and Jake were inseparable, their bond deepening into something that looked like siblinghood. Sarah enrolled Emma in a STEM program at Jake's private school, bought her a robotics kit she'd been eyeing for months, quietly paid for the math tutoring Marcus could never have afforded. Every time Marcus tried to protest, Sarah would remind him that Emma's success was an investment in the future, that brilliant kids deserved opportunities regardless of their parents' bank accounts. Marcus stopped protesting after the 3rd time. What he couldn't stop, what he wouldn't let himself acknowledge, was the way Sarah looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention. The way she touched his arm when they talked. The way her laugh sounded different around him, lighter and more genuine. The way she'd started joining him on the porch after the kids were asleep, sharing wine and conversation, and silences that felt like promises. "You're getting good at this," she said one Thursday evening, 6 weeks into his training. They were watching Emma and Jake catch fireflies in mason jars, their laughter floating across the lawn like music. "At what security? At being part of something, a family." Sarah's voice was careful, tentative. "The kids adore you. Maria thinks you're a saint. And I—" She stopped. Marcus's heart was a war drum. "And you what?" Sarah turned to look at him, and in the twilight, her eyes were impossibly dark. "I'm grateful. That you're here. That you survived. That you said yes to this insane arrangement." "That's all grateful?" "No." The word was barely a whisper. "But I don't know if I'm allowed to feel more than that. If we're allowed to be more than employer and employee." Marcus reached for her hand before his brain could stop him. "What if we stopped worrying about what we're allowed to feel and just felt it?" Sarah's breath caught. "Marcus, I know it's complicated. I know I work for you. I know there's a power imbalance and a million reasons this is a bad idea. But—" He squeezed her hand gently. "I haven't felt this alive in years. Not since before Emma's mom left. Not since before I started measuring my life in dollars and shifts. And if that's just gratitude, if that's just adrenaline from getting shot, then okay. But I don't think it is." Sarah's eyes were wet. "What if I hurt you? What if this doesn't work and you lose everything again? Then I lose everything. But at least I'll have tried." They sat like that for a long moment, hands intertwined, hearts racing the future, uncertain and terrifying, and suddenly full of possibility. And then Sarah leaned in and kissed him, soft and tentative, and tasting like wine and second chances. When they broke apart, both breathless, Sarah's smile was radiant. "This is a terrible idea," she said. "The worst," Marcus agreed. "We should probably stop." "Probably." She kissed him again, deeper this time, and Marcus felt 7 years of loneliness shatter like glass. Across the lawn, Emma squealed as she caught her 10th firefly. Jake was explaining something about bioluminescence, his hands gesturing wildly. And for the first time since the parking garage, Marcus allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he deserved this. The house. The job. The woman who saw him as more than just a paycheck or a tragedy. The life where Thursdays didn't taste like survival. They pulled apart when they heard footsteps. Maria appeared around the corner looking apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, Miss Sarah, but you have a call. It's urgent." Sarah sighed and stood, her hand lingering on Marcus's for a heartbeat longer than necessary. "Work never stops. Rain check. Always." She disappeared into the main house, leaving Marcus alone with his thundering heart and the realization that he was falling for his employer, his savior, the woman who'd given him everything and was now asking for nothing except the chance to build something real. This is insane, Marcus thought. This is moving too fast. This is Daddy. Emma came running over mason jar clutched in her hands. Look, I caught 15. Marcus pushed his spiraling thoughts aside and focused on his daughter. That's amazing, baby girl. You're a firefly catching champion. Jake says they're not flies, they're beetles, and they glow because of chemical reactions. Isn't that cool? The coolest. Emma set her jar down carefully and climbed into Marcus's lap, her small body warm and solid and real. Are you happy here, Daddy? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? You smile more. You don't do the worried faces much. And you and Miss Sarah? Emma paused, choosing her words carefully. You look at her like she's special. Marcus's throat tightened. She is special. Are you gonna marry her? It's complicated. Why? You like her. She likes you. Jake and I already feel like family. Why is that complicated? Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought. Why was it complicated? Because of money. Because of class. Because Marcus had spent his whole life believing he wasn't worthy of good things. And Sarah Morrison was the best thing that had happened to him since Emma was born. You're right, Marcus said finally. It shouldn't be complicated, but grown-up feelings are messy sometimes. Then unmess them, Emma said with the confidence of someone who'd never had her heart broken. Because I like it here. I like having Jake as a brother. And I think Miss Sarah would be a really good mom. Before Marcus could respond, Sarah emerged from the house, her expression tight. Everything okay? Marcus called. Sarah crossed the lawn quickly. We need to talk, privately. Marcus's stomach dropped. He set Emma down gently. Go play with Jake for a few more minutes, okay? Emma scampered off and Sarah sat down where she'd been earlier. But this time, there was no whine, no hand-holding, no soft smiles. What happened? Marcus asked. That was my head of legal. David made bail. The world tilted. How he tried to kill you. His family posted it, $2 million, and his lawyer convinced the judge he wasn't a flight risk. Sarah's hands were shaking. He's out, Marcus. He's out, and the restraining order is still in effect. But that didn't stop him before, and... Marcus took her hands, steadying them. Hey, look at me. He's not getting near you, or Jake, I promise. You can't promise that. You're still training. You're not even certified yet. I don't need a certification to protect you. Marcus's voice was steel. I did it once. I'll do it again, as many times as it takes. Sarah's eyes searched his face. This isn't your fight, Marcus. Yes, it is. The second I stepped between you and that gun, it became my fight. And I don't back down from fights. Not when the people I... He stopped himself. Not when people I care about are in danger. The almost confession hung between them like smoke. I'm scared, Sarah admitted. I'm terrified he's going to hurt Jake, or you, or... He won't. I won't let him. You can't be everywhere at once. Then I'll be where it counts. Marcus pulled her closer. Listen to me. I'm going to finish my training. I'm going to become the best damn bodyguard you've ever seen. And I'm going to make sure David Morrison spends the rest of his miserable life in prison where he belongs. Okay. Sarah nodded, but her fear was palpable, a living thing that Marcus could feel radiating off her in waves. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, Marcus lay awake and made a decision. He wasn't going to wait 2 months to become certified. He wasn't going to let bureaucracy and timelines stand between his family because that's what they were, now family and safety. He texted, Reeves, need to accelerate training. How fast can we make this happen? The response came at 2 a.m. You pushing yourself too hard again, Marcus typed. Someone I care about is in danger. I need to be ready. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Reeves. Meet me at 5 a.m. And Williams, bring everything you've got, because we're about to find out what you're really made of." Marcus didn't sleep. He spent the remaining hours researching David Morrison, learning everything he could about the man who'd tried to kill the woman Marcus was falling for. Investment banker, Yale graduate, came from old Houston money. 3 DUIs that mysteriously disappeared from his record. 2 prior domestic disturbance calls that never resulted in charges. A man who'd spent his life believing rules didn't apply to him, that money could buy him out of consequences. Marcus was going to teach him different. At 4:30 a.m., he left a note for Emma and drove to the warehouse. Reeves was already there. Along with 2 other trainers, Marcus recognized Chen, the FBI consultant, and Rodriguez, the former Secret Service agent. "Sarah called me," Reeves said without preamble. "Told me about the ex. Told me you made promises you're not equipped to keep yet." "Then equip me." Reeves studied him for a long moment. "This is going to hurt." "I don't care. You're going to want to quit." "I won't. And if you fail, if you wash out, there's no coming back. You get 1 shot at intensive training. You understand?" Marcus met Reeves's eyes. "I understand, and I'm not going to fail." Reeves smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made enemy combatants surrender. "Then let's get to work." What followed was the hardest month of Marcus's life. He trained 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, pushing his body and mind past every limit he thought he had. He learned advanced threat assessment, studied stalker psychology, practiced close-quarters combat until his muscles moved on instinct rather than thought. He qualified expert on 5 different firearms, earned his concealed carry permit, and memorized security protocols that would have taken most people 6 months to master. Emma saw less of him, but when they did have time together, Marcus made it count. Movie nights with Jake, trips to the Science Museum, quiet conversations where Marcus explained in age-appropriate terms that he was working hard to keep everyone safe. "I know Daddy," Emma said one rare evening when Marcus was home for dinner. "Miss Sarah told me you're going to be like her superhero, like in the movies." Marcus glanced at Sarah, who was trying very hard to look innocent. "Did she now? She said you're the bravest person she's ever met." And Jake said, "His mom never says stuff like that about anybody." Jake nodded solemnly. "It's true. Mom's really picky about people." Sarah blushed, actually blushed, and Marcus fell a little deeper in love with her. They hadn't kissed again since that first night, hadn't talked about what they were or weren't, but the tension was constant, electric, a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Sometimes Marcus would catch Sarah watching him during training sessions she'd observe. Sometimes she'd touch his arm when they passed in the hallway. And sometimes late at night when the kids were asleep, they'd sit on the porch and talk about everything except what they both wanted to say. "I'm almost done," Marcus told her one Thursday night 3 weeks into intensive training. "Reeves thinks another week, maybe 2. Then I take the final assessment. And if you pass—" "When I pass," Marcus corrected, "I become your official head of corporate security, and David Morrison becomes my problem to solve." Sarah's expression was complicated pride and fear, and something else Marcus couldn't quite name. "You've changed. Since that first day in the hospital. You stand different, move different. You look—" "Like what?" "Like someone who knows exactly who they are." Marcus thought about that. About the man he'd been 6 weeks ago, broken down, barely surviving, measuring his life in shifts and Emma's growth spurts, and the man he was becoming, trained, capable, worthy of the second chance he'd been given. "I know who I want to be," he said carefully. "Whether I'm actually that person yet, you are." Sarah's hand found his in the darkness. "You've always been that person, Marcus. You just needed someone to show you." They sat like that until the fireflies came out, until Emma called from inside that it was bedtime, until the world narrowed down to 2 people who'd found each other in a parking garage and were slowly building something that looked like forever. And somewhere in Houston, David Morrison sat in his family's mansion, scrolling through photos of his son planning his next move, convinced that money and rage would be enough to get back what he'd lost. He had no idea what was coming for him, but Marcus Williams did, and he was ready. The final assessment began at dawn on a Tuesday that felt like Judgment Day. Marcus stood in the warehouse wearing tactical gear that still felt foreign against his skin, watching Reeves set up what looked like an obstacle course designed by someone who hated humanity. Chen and Rodriguez were positioned at various stations, clipboards in hand, expressions unreadable. "You've got 2 hours," Reeves announced. 6 scenarios. Each one tests a different aspect of executive protection. You fail one, you fail all of them. Questions. Marcus's mouth was dry. "No, sir." "Then let's see what you're made of, Williams." The first scenario was threat assessment. Marcus was given 60 seconds to scan a staged corporate lobby, complete with actors playing business people, janitors, delivery personnel, and identify the 3 security risks. He found them in 47 seconds: the photographer with the telephoto lens concealed in his bag, the maintenance worker whose uniform was slightly wrong, and the receptionist who'd been replaced by someone 6 inches taller than the real employee. Reeves made a mark on his clipboard. Said nothing. The second scenario was close quarters combat. Rodriguez came at Marcus with a knife rubber, but the intensity was real, and Marcus had 8 seconds to disarm her without causing injury. He did it in 6, using a technique that would have seemed impossible 2 months ago. His body moving on pure muscle memory and training that had been beaten into him through repetition and pain. Chen nodded, still no words. The third scenario nearly broke him. They put Marcus in a car with a mannequin representing Sarah and simulated an ambush. Flashbangs shouting actors with fake weapons surrounding the vehicle. Marcus had to get his principal from the car to a safe location 30 feet away while under fire. His shoulder screamed as he dragged the mannequin. His ears rang from the flashbangs, and halfway there he stumbled and nearly dropped Sarah's proxy. But he didn't drop her. He made it to the safe zone with 5 seconds to spare his heart, trying to escape his chest, sweat pouring down his face. Reeves was writing something. His expression gave nothing away. The fourth scenario was psychological. They sat Marcus in a room and had him watch footage surveillance videos of stalker security breaches, violent attacks. He had to identify the warning signs, the moments where intervention could have prevented tragedy. It was brutal watching people fail to see danger until it was too late. Marcus identified 18 warning signs in the footage. The minimum passing score was 12. Rodriguez smiled for the first time all morning. The fifth scenario tested firearms proficiency under stress. Marcus had to qualify on 3 different weapons while instructors shouted conflicting orders. Strobe lights flashed, and a recording of Jake screaming for help played on loop. It was psychological warfare designed to simulate the chaos of a real crisis. Marcus's hands shook so badly on the first round he nearly failed. But then he heard Sarah's voice in his head. "You're the bravest person I've ever met." And something clicked. He tuned out everything except the targets and his breathing. When the smoke cleared, he'd scored 92% accuracy. Chen actually looked impressed. The final scenario was the one Marcus had been dreading. A live role play where Reeves himself played an aggressive individual confronting Sarah's stand-in, an actress who bore an unsettling resemblance to the real woman. Marcus had to de-escalate the situation without violence, talk the aggressor down, protect his principal. Reeves was terrifying. He got in Marcus's face, screamed about injustice and betrayal, made it personal in ways that cut deep. The actress playing Sarah was genuinely frightened. Marcus could see her hands shaking. And Marcus remembered the parking garage. Remembered David Morrison's voice cracking on every third word. Remembered the weight of a gun pointed at someone he was starting to love. "I hear you." Marcus said, his voice steady, despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "I hear that you're angry, that you feel wronged. And I'm not saying your feelings aren't valid, but this woman," he gestured to the actress, She's not your enemy. She's not the one who hurt you, and hurting her won't fix what's broken. Reeves pushed harder, got closer, made threats that sounded real enough to make Marcus's training partners tense up. You've got a choice right now. Marcus continued positioning himself between Reeves and the actress without making it obvious. You can escalate this and destroy your life, or you can walk away, get help, find a better way to deal with the pain. I know which choice I'd make if I were you. For a long, terrible moment, Reeves just stared at him. Then he stepped back, and his face transformed from rage to something like respect. Time, he called out. Assessment complete. Marcus's knees almost gave out. He'd done it. 6 scenarios, 2 hours. He'd actually done it. The 3 instructors huddled together, comparing notes, their voices too low to hear. Marcus stood there, trying not to vomit from anxiety, trying not to think about what failure would mean. Going back to construction, losing the house, watching Sarah hire someone else to protect her while Marcus returned to measuring his life in paychecks and Emma's growth spurts. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably 3 minutes, Reeves approached. Williams, he said, you scored 87% overall. You showed exceptional threat awareness, solid combat skills, and the kind of crisis management most people take years to develop. He paused, and Marcus's heart stopped. But you hesitated during the vehicle extraction. That hesitation could have gotten your principal killed. Marcus felt the world crumbling. However, Reeves continued, and his face finally cracked into something resembling a smile. You recovered. You adapted. And you completed the mission. That's what matters in this job. Not being perfect, being effective. He extended his hand. Congratulations, you're certified. Marcus shook his hand, unable to speak, relief flooding through him so intensely he thought he might cry. Don't make me regret this, Reeves added. And William, Sarah Morrison is lucky to have you. Make sure she stays that way. Yes, sir. I will, sir. Chen and Rodriguez both shook his hand, offered congratulations that felt earned rather than obligatory. And when Marcus finally left the warehouse and climbed into his car, he had to sit for 10 minutes just breathing, processing the fact that he'd actually done it. He was officially, legitimately qualified to protect the woman he loved. The woman I love. Marcus thought. When did that happen? But he knew when. It had happened the moment Sarah walked into his hospital room, looking like she carried the weight of his pain. It had happened during late-night porch conversations, and watching her be a mother to Jake. It had happened gradually, and then all at once, the way important things always do. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Sarah Reeves called. He said you passed. I'm so proud of you. Marcus stared at the message, his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Marcus, thank you for believing in me. Sarah, thank you for proving me right. Come home. We're celebrating. Home, Marcus thought. When had the Morrison estate become home? When had this borrowed life started to feel real? He drove back thinking about futures and second chances, about Emma growing up in a house with a yard, about Jake having a male role model who showed up, about Sarah finally feeling safe, about family. The Morrison estate was decorated when Marcus arrived, balloons and streamers turning the guest house into something festive. Emma and Jake came running out before Marcus even killed the engine, both of them shouting congratulations and pulling him toward the house where Sarah waited on the porch, wearing jeans and a smile that made Marcus's heart stutter. You did it, she said simply. I did it. I never doubted you would. Emma was bouncing. Miss Sarah said we could have a party, with cake, the chocolate kind. And ice cream, Jake added. The good kind from that fancy place downtown. Marcus looked at Sarah. You didn't have to do all this. Yes, I did. You just achieved something remarkable, Marcus. You went from construction worker to certified executive protection in 8 weeks. That deserves celebration. What she didn't say, what hung in the air between them, was that this changed everything. Marcus wasn't just the man she'd rescued anymore. He was her equal. Her employee, yes, but also her protector. Her partner in keeping their family safe. Their family. The party was small and perfect. Maria had made Marcus's favorite foods. How she'd learned his favorites. Marcus had no idea, and the kids ran around, hopped up on sugar, while Sarah and Marcus sat on the porch, watching them, shoulders touching hands, occasionally brushing. "I have something for you," Sarah said when the sun started setting. She handed Marcus a small box. Inside was a watch, elegant, expensive, with an inscription on the back, "For the bravest man I know." Marcus's throat closed up. "Sarah, I can't." "You can, and you will." Her voice was soft. "You start officially Monday. This is your signing bonus. This costs more than I made in 6 months. And you're worth every penny." Sarah turned to face him fully. "Marcus, I need you to understand something. This job, it's not charity. It's not me paying a debt. You earned this. You worked harder than anyone I've ever seen. You transformed yourself. And now I get to have someone protecting me who actually gives a damn whether I live or die." "Of course I give a damn." Marcus stopped himself. "You what?" The words were right there, pressing against his teeth, desperate to escape. "I love you. I'm falling for you. You're everything I didn't know I needed." But before Marcus could say anything, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. But something, instinct training the paranoia that came with his new job, made him answer. "Williams." Heavy breathing on the other end. Then, "You think you've won?" Marcus's blood turned to ice. He knew that voice. Had heard it in the parking garage, cracking with rage and desperation. David Morrison. Marcus stood up, suddenly alert, and Sarah's expression shifted from warm to worried in an instant. "David," Marcus said carefully, "you're violating your restraining order by calling me." "I'm not calling Sarah. I'm calling you. There's no order against that." David's voice was eerily calm now, the rage replaced by something colder. "I wanted to congratulate you on your new job, your new house, your new family." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "How do you—" "I have friends, Williams. Friends who tell me things. Like how you're living in my wife's guest house. How my son calls you Uncle Marcus. How you're playing house with my family." "They're not your family anymore." "Wrong." The word was sharp as broken glass. "Jake is my blood. Sarah is my wife. Ex-wife. A technicality I plan to correct." David's laugh was unsettling. "You think you can protect them? You think 2 months of playing soldier makes you qualified to stop me?" Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. "I know I can stop you. I already did once. You got lucky. But luck runs out, Marcus. And when it does, when you're not looking, when you think you're safe, that's when I'll take back what's mine." The line went dead. Marcus stood there, phone pressed to his ear, trying to control the adrenaline spike that made his hands shake. "Marcus." Sarah's voice was small. "What did he say?" Marcus turned to her, and he could see the fear in her eyes. The same fear from the parking garage. The same terror that no amount of money or security could fully erase. "He knows about us. About me living here. About everything." Sarah went pale. "How?" "He said he has friends, people watching." Marcus's mind was racing, analyzing threats, calculating risks. "We need to upgrade security, cameras, better locks. I need to know everyone who has access to this property." "Marcus, you're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared, because David's not done. He made bail and now he's—" Marcus stopped himself, forced his voice to calm. "I'm sorry. I'm not trying to frighten you more. But we need to take this seriously." Sarah nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "What do we do?" "We call the police. Report the violation. Get a recording of the threat if possible." Marcus checked his phone. "Damn it. I don't have call recording enabled." "I do." Sarah pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "On all our phones. Jake's too. I set it up after David started stalking me. Every call gets automatically backed up to the cloud." Marcus felt a surge of admiration. "That's smart. That's survival." Sarah's jaw was set. "I learned the hard way that you can't trust the system to protect you. You have to protect yourself." Inside the house, the kids were laughing, oblivious to the danger circling their world. Marcus thought about Emma's light-up shoes and Jake's science experiments and the fragile peace they'd all built together. "I won't let him hurt you," Marcus said. "Any of you. I promise." Sarah moved closer, her hand finding his. "I know. But Marcus David's not just angry anymore. He's calculating. That phone call was meant to rattle us, to show us he's still watching. Then we show him we're not afraid." "But I am afraid." Sarah's voice cracked. "I'm terrified. For Jake. For you. For—" She gestured at the house, the life they'd built. "All of this feels too good to be real, like I'm waiting for it to shatter." Marcus pulled her into his arms carefully because his shoulder still ached sometimes, and held her while she trembled against his chest. "It won't shatter," he whispered into her hair. "I won't let it." But even as he said the words, Marcus knew David Morrison was out there somewhere, planning, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And no amount of training could predict when or how that strike would come. They filed a police report that night. A detective came to the house, a weary-looking woman named Garcia, who'd apparently handled Sarah's case before, and listened to the recording of David's call with an expression that said she'd heard worse but didn't like it anyway. "It's definitely a violation," Garcia confirmed. "I'll report it to his parole officer, but realistically, he'll get a slap on the wrist, maybe ankle monitoring, maybe." "That's it," Marcus demanded. "He threatened her. He's stalking them." He made vague statements that a good lawyer could argue weren't explicit threats. He didn't threaten violence. He didn't specify intent to harm. Garcia looked genuinely sorry. "I know it's not what you want to hear, but the system moves slow, especially when the person has money and connections." Sarah's face was resigned, like she'd expected this. "What can we do? Document everything. Every call text citing. Build a pattern. Eventually, we'll have enough for a judge to revoke his bail." Garcia handed Marcus her card. "And Mr. Williams, I heard you're ex-military." "Construction, actually. But I just got certified in executive protection." Garcia's eyebrows rose. "Good. Because the best protection Sarah's going to get isn't from the police. It's from people who care whether she lives or dies." She stood to leave. "Call me if David contacts you again. Or if anything feels wrong. Trust your instincts." After Garcia left, Marcus did a full security sweep of the property. He found 3 blind spots in the camera coverage, 4 entry points that weren't properly secured, and a section of fence in the back that a determined person could scale. He made a list, started pricing security upgrades, calculated how much of his new salary he could divert toward keeping his family safe. His family. When had he started thinking of them that way? Sarah found him at midnight still working on security plans at the kitchen table in the guest house. "You should be sleeping," she said. "So should you." She sat down across from him, still wearing the clothes from earlier, her perfect composure finally cracking to show the exhausted woman underneath. "I can't sleep. Every noise sounds like David breaking in. Every shadow looks like—" Her voice broke. "I'm so tired of being afraid." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "Then let me be afraid for you. That's literally my job now." Sarah laughed, but it came out wrong, came out like a sob. "I hired you to protect my company, not to—" She gestured at the security plans, the notes, the obvious obsession. "This is too much, Marcus. You just finished training. You should be celebrating, not—" "The celebration doesn't mean anything if you're not safe." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Sarah, when I took that bullet, it wasn't just about doing the right thing. It was about seeing someone in danger and knowing I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to help. And now—" He took a breath. "Now it's not just someone. It's you. It's Jake. It's Emma. It's this life we're building. And I will burn myself to the ground before I let David Morrison take that away." Sarah was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face. "Why? Why do you care so much?" "Because—" Marcus stopped, started over. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night in the hospital? You said I reminded you there are still good people in the world." "I remember." "Well, you reminded me that I deserve good things, that survival isn't the same as living, that I'm allowed to want more than just making it through another Thursday." Marcus stood up and moved around the table, kneeling beside her chair so they were eye level. "I'm falling in love with you, Sarah. Maybe I have been since you walked into my hospital room looking like you carried my pain. And I know it's complicated and messy and probably unprofessional, but I don't care anymore. Because you make me want to be the man you think I am." Sarah's hands came up to frame his face, her touch gentle against his jaw. "You already are that man. You've always been that man. Then let me protect you. Let me—" She kissed him before he could finish, and it was different from that first tentative kiss on the porch. This was desperate and honest, and tasted like tears and coffee, and the kind of hope that comes from finally admitting what you want. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Sarah rested her forehead against his. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have since you talked David down in that garage, since you risked everything for a stranger. I'd do it again, 1,000 times. I know, that's what terrifies me." They stayed like that until the sun started rising, wrapped in each other, planning security upgrades, and trying to pretend David Morrison wasn't out there somewhere watching, waiting for his moment. Marcus started officially on Monday, wearing a suit that Sarah had insisted on buying him, tailored, expensive, the kind of thing he'd never imagined owning. Emma had cried when she saw him, saying he looked like a prince. Jake had high-fived him and declared him the coolest adult he knew. And Sarah had looked at him with an expression that made Marcus feel like he'd finally found where he belonged. His first official act as head of corporate security was implementing a complete overhaul of Morrison Industries' protection protocols. He hired 3 additional security personnel, all former military, all personally vetted by Reeves. He installed biometric locks on Sarah's office, set up a panic room in the corporate suite, established check-in procedures for Jake's school. His second act was creating a threat assessment specifically focused on David Morrison. Marcus studied the man like he was planning a military operation. David's financials, his associates, his patterns. Where he ate lunch, what gym he belonged to, who he'd been talking to since making bail. Marcus built a profile so detailed he could predict David's movements 3 days in advance. "You're obsessed," Chen commented one afternoon when Marcus was reviewing surveillance footage for the 15th time. "I'm thorough." "There's a line, Williams. Don't cross it." But Marcus was already dancing on that line, maybe already over it. Because David Morrison had become more than just a threat to assess. He'd become personal, the man who'd tried to kill the woman Marcus loved, the father who terrified his own son, the ex-husband who refused to let go. 2 weeks into the job, Marcus got his first real test. Sarah was scheduled to speak at a conference downtown, 500 attendees, public venue security nightmare. Marcus spent 3 days planning. He walked the venue 6 times, identified every entrance and exit, coordinated with hotel security, ran background checks on the event organizers. He was ready for anything. Except what actually happened. Sarah was mid-speech, something about sustainable business practices and corporate responsibility, when Marcus spotted him in the crowd. Row 12, aisle seat, wearing sunglasses indoors like a cliché. David Morrison violating his restraining order, sitting 20 feet from his ex-wife while she stood at a podium completely exposed. Marcus's training kicked in before conscious thought. He moved through the crowd smoothly, professionally, positioning himself between David and the stage. David saw him coming and smiled, actually smiled like this was all a game. "Mr. Morrison," Marcus said quietly, not wanting to cause a scene. "You need to leave. Now. This is a public event. I have every right to be here." You have a restraining order that says otherwise, which applies to Sarah, not to public venues where she happens to be speaking. David's smile widened. I checked with my lawyer. I'm well within my rights. Marcus felt his hands clenching into fists and forced them to relax. This was exactly what David wanted. Marcus losing control, causing a scene, making Sarah look bad. You're making her uncomfortable. That's not illegal. It should be. David leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only Marcus could hear. How's my son? Still calling you Uncle Marcus. Still forgetting I exist. Marcus felt rage spike through him, hot and dangerous. Jake's thriving because he's finally away from a father who terrifies him. I never laid a hand on my boy. You pointed a gun at his mother. That's enough. Something flickered in David's eyes, pain maybe, or the ghost of the man he used to be before anger consumed him. I love my son. Then prove it. Leave him alone. Let him heal. David stood up and Marcus tensed, ready for violence. But David just adjusted his sunglasses and smoothed his expensive suit. Tell Sarah I enjoyed her speech, he said. Very inspiring. All that talk about second chances and redemption. Maybe she should practice what she preaches. Then he walked out, leaving Marcus standing in the aisle with his heart pounding and the terrible knowledge that this was far from over. Sarah finished her speech to thunderous applause. Marcus escorted her backstage, where she immediately pulled off her microphone with shaking hands. He was here? She said. It wasn't a question. Row 12. I handled it. How? I asked him to leave. He refused, but he left on his own after... Marcus hesitated. After sending a message. Sarah's face was pale. What message? That he's not going away, that he thinks he deserves another chance. Marcus wanted to punch something. I should have had him arrested. For what? Attending a public conference. Sarah sank into a chair. This is how he operates, Marcus. He finds loopholes. He pushes boundaries just enough to terrify me without technically breaking the law. And there's nothing we can do except wait for him to escalate. I won't let him escalate. You can't stop him forever. He's patient. He's smart. And he's convinced I'm the villain in his story. Sarah looked up at Marcus with eyes that had seen too much. What happens when patience runs out? When he decides talking isn't enough? Marcus knelt in front of her the same way he had that night in the kitchen. Then I'll be there, between you and whatever he throws at us. That's my job. That's my promise. Sarah touched his face, her hand trembling. I can't lose you too. You won't. But even as Marcus said it, he wondered if promises meant anything against a man who had nothing left to lose. That night, after Emma and Jake were asleep, Marcus and Sarah sat in the main house's study, going over security footage from the conference. They watched David enter, watched him sit, watched him smile at Marcus, like a predator playing with prey. They watched him leave without incident, without doing anything that would justify police intervention. He's escalating, Marcus said. The phone call was testing boundaries. Today was sending a message. Next time he'll do something we can't predict. Sarah rubbed her temples. I know this pattern, Marcus. I lived it for 2 years while we were married. The anger would build, and just when I thought he'd explode, he'd do something cold and calculated instead. He'd close our joint bank account. He'd tell lies to my business partners. She stopped, her voice breaking. He made me feel crazy, like I was imagining the danger. Marcus pulled her close. You're not imagining it, and you're not alone anymore. What if being with me puts you in danger? What if David decides you're the obstacle and then he'll learn I'm not as easy to remove as he thinks? Sarah looked at him with something like fear. Don't underestimate him, Marcus. Please. He's not just angry, he's intelligent, and he has resources. So do we. Do we? Sarah gestured at the monitors, the cameras, the expensive security setup. All of this, and he still walked right up to me today. He still got close enough to hurt me if he'd wanted to. Marcus couldn't argue with that. Couldn't explain away the fact that despite weeks of training and planning, David had found a loophole and exploited it perfectly. "I'll do better," he said. "You're already doing everything possible." Sarah's hand found his. "But Marcus, you need to understand David won't stop. Not until he gets what he wants, or someone makes him stop permanently." The implication hung in the air between them, dark and complicated. "I won't become him," Marcus said quietly. "I won't let rage turn me into the thing I'm fighting against." "I know. That's why I love you." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "But sometimes I wonder if being good is enough. If following the rules matters when the other side doesn't." Marcus thought about that for a long time. About justice and vengeance, about protection and prevention, about the line between defending someone you love and destroying someone you hate. "It has to be enough," he finally said. "Because if it's not, if we compromise who we are to fight him, then he wins anyway." Sarah nodded, but Marcus could feel the doubt radiating off her in waves. They went to bed in separate houses that night, propriety and caution keeping them apart, despite the fact that everyone who mattered knew they were together. Marcus lay awake listening to Emma breathe in the next room, thinking about futures and threats about the man he used to be and the man he was becoming. Somewhere in Houston, David Morrison was probably lying awake too, planning his next move, convinced that love and determination could force the world to bend to his will. He had no idea that Marcus Williams had made the same mistake, had learned the hard way that you can't control everything, can't protect everyone, can't prevent tragedy through sheer force of will. But Marcus also knew something David had forgotten, that sometimes surviving meant accepting help, building community, trusting others to catch you when you fell. And Marcus had finally learned to fall. His phone buzzed at 3 a.m. A text from an unknown number. Just an image. Marcus opened it and felt his blood turn to ice. It was a photo of Emma and Jake playing in the backyard, taken from outside the property fence. Recent Jake was wearing the shirt he'd had on yesterday, and written across the bottom in red text, "Beautiful children. Would be a shame if something happened to them." Marcus was out of bed and running before conscious thought caught up his phone, already dialing Sarah's number, his brain already cataloging threats and responses, and the terrible knowledge that David Morrison had just declared war. And this time, there would be no talking him down. Sarah answered on the first ring, her voice sharp with immediate alertness that told Marcus she hadn't been sleeping either. "He sent a photo," Marcus said without preamble, "of the kids, playing in our backyard, with a threat." The silence on the other end lasted 3 heartbeats. Then, "I'm calling the police. Don't move. Don't go outside. Just stay with Emma." But Marcus was already moving, checking windows, securing locks, his training overriding the panic that wanted to consume him. He sent the photo to Detective Garcia, to Reeves, to his entire security team. Within minutes, his phone was ringing with callbacks, but Marcus ignored them all except one. "This crossed a line," Reeves said, his voice carrying the kind of cold fury that made enemy combatants surrender. "Threatening children. I know people, Williams. People who could make David Morrison disappear." "No," Marcus forced the word out, even though part of him wanted to say yes, wanted to let Reeves handle this in whatever dark way former Marines handled threats to innocents. "We do this right. Legal. By the book. The book hasn't kept those kids safe. The book is all we have." Reeves was quiet for a moment. "You're a better man than me, Williams. But if David touches those children, the book goes out the window. We clear. Crystal." Detective Garcia arrived 47 minutes later with 2 uniformed officers and an expression that said she'd been expecting this call eventually. She studied the photo on Marcus's phone, her jaw tightening with each passing second. "This is explicit," she said. "This is prosecutable. We can arrest him tonight." Relief flooded through Marcus so intensely his knees went weak. "When? I'll get a warrant within the hour. We'll pick him up at his residence." Garcia looked at Sarah, who'd appeared in the guest house wearing a robe, in fear. "This might be enough to revoke his bail completely. Keep him locked up until trial. How long until trial? Sarah asked. 6 months, maybe more. That's not good enough. Marcus's voice was harder than he intended. He's escalating. 6 months gives him time to— I know. Garcia's expression was sympathetic but firm. But it's the system we have. Unless he violates bail conditions or commits another crime, it's the best we can do. After Garcia left to execute the warrant, Marcus and Sarah stood in the guesthouse living room trying to process the adrenaline crash. Emma was still sleeping upstairs, oblivious to the danger that had been photographing her through the fence. Jake was in the main house, equally unaware, and Marcus felt the weight of their innocence pressing down on him like a physical thing. I should have seen this coming, he said. How? Sarah's voice was raw. How could you possibly predict that David would threaten children, his own son? Because desperate men do desperate things. Because I've been so focused on physical security that I didn't think about. Marcus gestured helplessly at his phone. Psychological warfare, terror tactics, making us afraid to let the kids play in their own yard. Sarah moved closer, her hand finding his. This isn't your fault. It feels like my fault. Well, it's not. It's David's. Only David's. Sarah's grip tightened. And he's going to pay for this. I'll make sure of it. There was something in her voice that made Marcus look at her more closely. Sarah's face was composed, but her eyes carried a cold determination he'd never seen before. This wasn't the terrified woman from the parking garage. This was the CEO who had built a billion-dollar empire. The mother who would burn the world down to protect her child. What are you thinking? Marcus asked carefully. I'm thinking that the legal system has failed us at every turn. That restraining orders are just paper. That David has money and lawyers and family connections that let him do whatever he wants. Sarah's voice was ice. I'm thinking maybe it's time to fight dirty. Sarah, I have resources, Marcus. Private investigators. Lawyers who make prosecutors look like amateurs. People who owe me favors. She pulled out her phone. I can destroy David Morrison's life the way he's trying to destroy ours. His finances. His reputation. His freedom. I can make him wish he'd never heard my name. Marcus caught her hand before she could make the call. Don't become him. He threatened our children. I know, and we're going to stop him, but not by compromising who we are. Marcus pulled Sarah into his arms, feeling her tremble against his chest. We're better than him. We have to be, because Emma and Jake are watching. Learning what it means to be good people in a world that punishes goodness. And if we give up on being good, if we decide the ends justify the means, what are we teaching them? Sarah was crying. Now silent sobs that shook her whole body. I'm so tired of being afraid, of waiting for him to hurt us, of feeling powerless. You're not powerless. You're the strongest person I know. Marcus kissed the top of her head. And you're not alone anymore. We face this together. They stood like that until Sarah's phone rang. Detective Garcia, calling to report that David Morrison had been arrested without incident, was being booked on terroristic threats and violation of protective order, and would likely remain in custody until his arraignment in the morning. It's done, Sarah said after hanging up. He's in jail. Marcus should have felt relief, should have felt vindicated. But all he felt was the hollow certainty that this wasn't over. That arresting David Morrison was like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, temporarily effective, but ultimately insufficient. What happens at arraignment? Marcus asked. Judge reviews the charges, sets bail, or denies it if the prosecutor argues he's a flight risk. Sarah's voice was mechanical, reciting facts to avoid feeling emotions. His lawyer will argue that the photo wasn't a real threat, that the text could have been sent by anyone, that there's no proof David was actually behind it. It came from his phone, which he'll claim was stolen or hacked or accessed by someone else. Sarah sat down heavily on the couch. I know how this plays out, Marcus. I've lived it before. David will make bail again. Maybe not tonight, maybe not this week, but eventually. And when he does, I'll be ready." But Marcus wasn't sure ready was enough anymore. Dawn came with no sleep and too much coffee. Emma woke up to find both Marcus and Sarah in the guest house kitchen, along with 2 security guards Marcus didn't recognize. She took one look at the adults' faces, and her smile disappeared. "What happened?" she asked in a small voice. Marcus knelt down to her level. "Remember how we talked about stranger danger? About how some people aren't safe?" Emma nodded. "Well, someone took a picture of you and Jake playing yesterday. Someone who shouldn't have been near our house. And we're making sure it doesn't happen again." "Was it the bad man from the garage, Jake's old daddy?" Marcus exchanged a glance with Sarah. They'd tried so hard to shield the kids from the specifics, but children always knew more than adults thought they did. "Yeah, baby girl. It was him." Emma's eyes welled with tears. "Is he going to hurt us?" "No." Marcus said it with absolute conviction, even though he couldn't guarantee it. "No, because I won't let him, and neither will Miss Sarah. And we have a whole team of people whose job is to keep you safe. But you got shot last time." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Emma had been so brave in the hospital, so resilient afterward, that he'd almost forgotten she'd watched him bleed out on a parking garage floor. "I did," Marcus admitted. "But I also stopped the bad man. I protected Miss Sarah, and I'll do it again if I have to. That's what people who love each other do. We protect each other." Emma wrapped her arms around his neck and held on tight. "I don't want you to get hurt again, Daddy." "I'll do my best not to." It was the most honest answer Marcus could give. Jake appeared an hour later, driven over by Maria, who looked like she'd been crying. The boy's face was solemn as he approached Sarah, his voice quiet when he spoke. "Mom, is Dad in jail again?" Sarah's composure cracked. "Yes, sweetheart, he is." "Because of the picture. You know about the picture." Jake nodded. "I heard you on the phone. You weren't being quiet." He sat down at the kitchen table, suddenly looking much older than 8. "Is he ever going to stop?" Sarah sat beside him, taking his small hands in hers. "I don't know, baby. I really don't know." "I wish," Jake's voice broke. "I wish he was like Marcus. I wish he protected people instead of hurting them." Marcus felt his throat close up. He'd been trying so hard to be a positive presence in Jake's life without overstepping, without trying to replace David. But hearing the boy say it out loud, comparing his father to Marcus, and finding David wanting, was both heartbreaking and humbling. "Your dad loves you," Sarah said carefully. He's sick, Jake. In his heart, in his head. And sometimes when people are sick like that, they hurt the people they love. Then he should get medicine. It's not that kind of sick." Jake pulled his hands away, his face hardening in a way that reminded Marcus uncomfortably of David. "I don't care. I don't want to see him anymore, ever." Sarah looked stricken. "Jake." "I mean it, Mom. He scares me. He scares you. He makes Marcus have the worry face all the time. I just want him to go away and never come back." Emma, who'd been sitting quietly beside Marcus, spoke up in her small, brave voice. "My mama went away and never came back. And it was sad. But then we found Miss Sarah and Jake, and it got better. Maybe sometimes people go away so better people can come instead." The adults in the room exchanged glances, none of them knowing how to respond to 7-year-old philosophy that was simultaneously innocent and devastating. Marcus decided to change the subject before the kids could see their parents cry. "Who wants pancakes?" Both children raised their hands, and the morning became about chocolate chips and whipped cream, and pretending that the world outside wasn't dangerous. The security guard stayed visible but unobtrusive, a reminder that safety required constant vigilance. By noon, Marcus had implemented new protocols. The kids weren't allowed outside. Without supervision, all visitors had to be pre-approved, and the security team now did perimeter sweeps every 2 hours. It felt like living in a prison, but it was the only way Marcus could breathe. Sarah's phone rang while they were eating lunch. She answered, listened for 30 seconds, and her face went white. "When?" she asked. "Then, how much?" "Then, of course he did." She hung up and looked at Marcus with eyes that had gone dead. David made bail. 2 million. His family posted it an hour ago. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. Garcia said the judge would consider denying bail. She didn't say it would actually happen. Sarah's voice was hollow. "He'll be released this afternoon, with ankle monitoring and additional restrictions, but still, free." "How is that possible? He threatened children." Because his lawyer argued it was a misunderstanding, that David was trying to send Sarah a picture showing how well the kids were doing, how happy they looked, and the text was meant to be ironic. A commentary on how Sarah was keeping Jake from him. Sarah laughed, but it sounded broken. The judge bought it, or the judge was bought. Either way, David walks. Marcus stood up so fast, his chair fell over. "No, absolutely not. You'll what?" Sarah's eyes were challenging now. "Arrest him yourself. Beat him up. Kill him." The last word hung in the air like smoke. Marcus forced himself to breathe, to think, to not become the thing he was fighting against. "I'll keep you safe," he said finally. "Whatever it takes, legal or not." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, and Marcus saw her making a decision. Saw her cross some internal line she'd been dancing around for weeks. "Okay," she said quietly. "Then we need to talk. Privately." They left the kids with Maria and the security team and walked to the main house's study. Sarah locked the door behind them, pulled the curtains closed, and turned to Marcus with an expression that made his stomach drop. "I have a plan," she said, "but you're not going to like it. Tell me anyway." Sarah took a breath. "David wants Jake. That's what all of this is about. The stalking, the threats, the obsession. He thinks if he can terrify me enough, I'll give him custody just to make it stop. You would never—" "I know. But David doesn't think like a rational person. He thinks like someone who's lost everything and is willing to destroy the world to get it back." Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a series of emails. His lawyer's been sending settlement offers, increasing custody time, lowering child support, all presented as reasonable compromises that would avoid a lengthy court battle. Marcus scanned the emails, his anger building with each one. "This is extortion. This is leverage." Sarah's voice was cold. "And I'm going to use it. I'm going to offer David exactly what he wants. Unsupervised visitation, every other weekend, holidays, the works." "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious, because the visitation will be supervised, not by court-appointed monitors, but by people I trust. People who will document every interaction, every conversation, every moment that shows David is unfit." Sarah's eyes gleamed. "I'm going to give him enough rope to hang himself." Marcus stared at her. "You're using Jake as bait." "I'm using the promise of Jake as bait. David will never actually get unsupervised time with him, but he'll think he's winning. He'll let his guard down. He'll show his true colors." Sarah leaned against her desk. "And when he does, when he inevitably violates the agreement, or shows violence, or proves he's unstable, I'll have everything I need to terminate his parental rights permanently." It was brilliant and ruthless, and exactly the kind of plan a CEO would devise. But it was also dangerous in ways Sarah didn't seem to fully grasp. "What if he doesn't take the bait?" Marcus asked. "What if he sees through it?" "Then we're no worse off than we are now. But David's ego won't let him refuse. He'll think he's manipulated me, that his tactics worked." Sarah's smile was sharp. "Men like David always underestimate the women they hurt. It's their fatal flaw." Marcus thought about it, analyzing the plan the way Reeves had taught him to analyze threats. The risks were enormous. If David figured out he was being set up, he might escalate further. But if it worked, if they could document enough evidence to permanently remove him from Jake's life, it might be the only way to end this without someone dying. "Okay," Marcus said finally. "But I'm the one supervising the visits. Me. Not some private investigator or court monitor. Me." "Marcus. Non-negotiable, Sarah. You want to use your son to trap his father, fine. But I'm the one keeping Jake safe while you do it." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, and Marcus saw gratitude and love and fear warring in her expression. "Okay," she agreed. "You supervise. But Marcus, if this goes wrong, if David hurts Jake or you or anyone, it won't go wrong. I won't let it." But even as Marcus said the words, he wondered if he was making a promise he couldn't keep. The arrangement was proposed through lawyers the next day. David's response came back within hours, and Marcus could practically hear the triumph in the carefully worded email. David agreed to supervised visitation starting the following weekend, 2 hours every Saturday, at a neutral location, with the understanding that supervision would be gradually reduced based on successful visits. "He thinks he's won," Sarah said, reading the email over Marcus's shoulder. "Look at that last paragraph. He's already planning Jake's future. Soccer camp next summer. Private school in the fall. He's convinced this is the beginning of getting his son back." Marcus felt sick. "And Jake? What does he think about this?" Sarah's face fell. "I haven't told him yet. I don't know how to explain that he has to spend time with the father he's terrified of, so we can prove that father is dangerous." "You tell him the truth, that we're protecting him, that nothing will happen while I'm there." "What if he doesn't believe me? What if this destroys the trust we've built?" Marcus thought about Emma, about the way she'd looked at him in the hospital, believing absolutely that her daddy would be okay, because he'd promised. The weight of a child's trust was heavier than any bullet. "Kids are stronger than we think," Marcus said. "And Jake's stronger than most. He'll understand." But when they told Jake that evening, his reaction was worse than either of them expected. "No." The word was flat, final. "I'm not going." "Sweetheart, it's just for a little while," Sarah started. "I said no." Jake's voice rose, cracking with emotion. "You can't make me see him. You promised I'd be safe." "You will be safe. Marcus will be right there the whole time." Jake looked at Marcus with betrayed eyes. "You said you'd protect me. You said the bad man couldn't hurt me." "And he can't," Marcus said, kneeling to Jake's level. "I promise, buddy. Your dad won't touch you while I'm there. But I'll still have to see him. Listen to him. Pretend I'm not scared." Jake's tears were falling now, hot and angry. "Why are you making me do this? Why can't he just stay in jail?" Sarah pulled her son into her arms, and Marcus watched them both cry, hating himself for agreeing to this plan, hating David Morrison for creating a situation where using a child as bait felt necessary. Emma appeared in the doorway, Hopper the rabbit clutched in her arms. She took one look at Jake crying and walked over to him with the kind of solemn purpose only children possess. "Here," she said, handing Jake the rabbit. "Hopper helps when you're scared. He helped me when my daddy got shot. He can help you too." Jake took the rabbit with shaking hands. "I can't keep him. He's yours." "We can share. That's what family does." Marcus felt his heart crack open. These children had built something beautiful in the midst of chaos, had chosen each other as siblings, despite having no blood connection, and now the adults were asking them to be brave in ways no child should have to be. "I'll make you a deal," Marcus said to Jake. "You try one visit, just one. And if it's too much, if you can't handle it, we stop. We find another way." "Okay." Jake wiped his eyes. "Promise." "I promise. On my life. On Emma's life. On everything I am." It was a reckless promise, potentially an empty one, but Jake needed to hear it. needed to believe that someone would prioritize his well-being over legal strategy. "Okay," Jake whispered. "One visit." The week leading up to that first visit was a masterclass in anxiety. Marcus prepared like he was planning a military operation, studying the meeting location, a family therapy center with security cameras and panic buttons coordinating with his security team. 2 guards outside, 1 in the parking lot, and running through every possible scenario until he could predict David's moves 3 steps ahead. Sarah was a wreck, oscillating between certainty that this was the right plan and terror that they were making a catastrophic mistake. She second-guessed herself constantly, called her lawyer at midnight with new concerns, and barely slept. Marcus caught her in the kitchen at 3 a.m. the night before the visit, staring at a cup of tea she'd forgotten to drink. "Second thoughts?" he asked. "100th thoughts?" Sarah looked up at him with exhausted eyes. "What if I'm wrong, Marcus? What if exposing Jake to David causes more trauma than it prevents? Then we stop. We honor my promise to Jake, and we find another way." What other way? Legal channels have failed. Restraining orders don't work. The police can't help until David actually hurts someone. Sarah's voice broke. "I feel like I'm in a chess game where all the pieces are people I love and one wrong move could destroy everything." Marcus sat beside her, taking her hand. "Then we don't make the wrong move. We trust our instincts. We protect Jake. And we remember that David doesn't get to win just because he's willing to fight dirty." What if fighting dirty is the only way to win? It was the question that had been haunting Marcus since Sarah first proposed the plan. The question that kept him awake, analyzing scenarios and calculating risks and wondering where the line was between protection and revenge. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But I know that Jake and Emma are watching us, learning from us. And whatever we teach them now about right and wrong, about ends and means, that's what they'll carry for the rest of their lives." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "When did you become so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who got shot and decided to do better." They sat like that until dawn, drawing strength from each other, preparing for a battle neither of them wanted to fight. Saturday arrived cold and gray, the kind of Houston morning that felt like a metaphor. Marcus dressed in civilian clothes, jeans, and a button-down, non-threatening but still professional, and checked his concealed carry permit twice. He was armed legally and praying he wouldn't need to be. Jake was silent during the drive to the therapy center, clutching Hopper the rabbit like a lifeline. Emma had insisted on coming along for moral support, and she sat in the back seat, holding Jake's free hand, her small face set with determination. "Remember," Marcus said as they pulled into the parking lot, "I'm with you the whole time. Your dad can't do anything while I'm there. What if he tries? Then I stop him. That's my job." The family therapy center was aggressively neutral beige walls, comfortable furniture, children's toys scattered around to create an illusion of normalcy. The therapist who greeted them was a middle-aged woman named Dr. Chen, who had kind eyes and a firm handshake. "I'll be observing from the next room," she explained to Jake. "And Marcus will be in the room with you the whole time. If you need to stop for any reason, you just say the word pineapple. That's our safe word. Okay." Jake nodded, mute with fear. David arrived exactly on time, flanked by his lawyer, a sharp-dressed man who looked like he defended war criminals for fun. David had cleaned up for the occasion, wearing slacks and a polo shirt, his hair neatly combed, his face arranged in an expression of paternal concern that might have been convincing if Marcus hadn't seen him pointing a gun at Sarah. "Son," David said, his voice warm. "It's so good to see you." Jake pressed closer to Marcus, his hand finding Marcus's instinctively. David's eyes flicked to their joined hands, and something dark crossed his face before the mask of concern snapped back into place. "Mr. Morrison," Marcus said formally. "I'm Marcus Williams. I'll be supervising today's visit." "I remember you." David's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The hero from the parking garage. How's your shoulder?" "Healed. Thanks for asking." The subtext was clear. "I shot you once. I could do it again." Dr. Chen ushered them into the visitation room, a space with windows on all sides, so observers could monitor every interaction. Jake sat in a chair near the door, as far from David as possible. Marcus positioned himself between them, close enough to intervene, but trying not to be obvious about it. David took a seat and tried to smile at his son. "You've grown. How's school?" Jake stared at his shoes. "He's doing really well," Marcus offered when the silence stretched too long. "Honor roll last quarter. Science fair project on renewable energy." "That's great, buddy." David's voice had an edge, now frustrated by Jake's silence. "You always were smart. Gets it from me." Jake's hands tightened on Hopper the rabbit. "Jake," David tried again. "I know you're mad at me, and I get it. I made mistakes. Big ones. But I'm getting help now. Therapy. Anger management. All of it. Because I love you, and I want to be the dad you deserve." Still nothing from Jake. David's composure started slipping. "Could you at least look at me? I'm your father. The least you could do is—" "David?" Marcus interrupted quietly. "He's 8. And he's scared. Pushing him won't help." David's eyes snapped to Marcus, and for a moment the mask fell completely. Pure rage flickered across his face before he controlled it. "I don't need parenting advice from my wife's bodyguard." "Ex-wife," Marcus corrected. "And I'm not giving advice. I'm stating facts." The tension in the room ratcheted up 10 degrees. Dr. Chen, watching from the observation window, leaned forward with concern. David stood up abruptly, and Jake flinched so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. Marcus was on his feet, instantly positioning himself between father and son. "I just want to give him a hug," David said, but his hands were shaking with suppressed rage. "That's not a crime, is it? Hugging my own kid?" "Jake," Marcus said softly, not taking his eyes off David. "Do you want a hug from your dad?" "No." Jake's voice was small but clear. "Pineapple. I want to say pineapple." Dr. Chen was already moving, opening the door to the visitation room. "I think that's enough for today." David's face went purple. "We have 2 hours. The agreement says—" "The agreement also says the child can end the visit if he's uncomfortable," Dr. Chen said firmly. "And Jake has invoked his safe word." "This is bullshit. This is Sarah manipulating him against me. She's poisoning my son's mind." "Mr. Morrison," Dr. Chen's voice was steel-wrapped in professionalism. "If you continue, I'll have no choice but to report that this visit was unsuccessful due to your aggressive behavior." David looked at Marcus, at Jake, cowering behind him, at the therapist blocking the door. His hands clenched into fists. For one terrible moment, Marcus thought David might actually throw a punch. His own training kicked in muscle memory, preparing for violence. But then, David's lawyer appeared in the doorway, put a hand on his client's shoulder, and whispered something that made David deflate. "Fine," David spat. "But this isn't over. Tell Sarah she can't hide behind lawyers and bodyguards forever. Tell her—" He stopped himself, visibly regaining control. "Tell her I'll see her in court." He stormed out, his lawyer following, leaving Marcus and Jake and Dr. Chen in the aftermath of barely avoided violence. Jake was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. Marcus knelt down and pulled the boy into his arms, feeling small fists clutch his shirt. "You were so brave," Marcus whispered. So brave." "I want my mom." "She's right outside. Let's go find her." Sarah was in the waiting room, pacing like a caged animal. When she saw Jake's face, she ran to him, scooping him up despite the fact that he was 8 and getting too big to carry. Jake buried his face in her neck and sobbed while Sarah made promises neither of them could keep about safety and never having to see David again. Emma appeared from wherever Maria had been keeping her entertained, took one look at her chosen brother crying, and started crying too. Soon all 4 of them were tangled together in the therapy center waiting room, a family bound by love and trauma, while Dr. Chen made notes on her clipboard that would either save them or destroy them, depending on how a judge interpreted the data. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. You think you can keep them from me? You think some construction worker playing soldier can stop me from getting my son back? You're dead. You just don't know it yet." Marcus stared at the message, his blood running cold, and knew with absolute certainty that the next time he saw David Morrison, one of them wouldn't walk away. Marcus forwarded the threat to Detective Garcia before they'd even left the therapy center parking lot. Her response came back within minutes, terse and professionally frustrated. Garcia screenshot, saved. Adding to evidence file. But unless he acts on the threat, there's nothing we can do. Stay vigilant. Stay vigilant. As if Marcus had been doing anything else for the past 2 months. The drive home was silent, except for Jake's occasional sniffles and Emma's whispered reassurances. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, her jaw set in that way that meant she was making decisions Marcus wouldn't like. When they pulled into the estate, she turned to him with eyes that had gone cold and calculating. "I'm calling my lawyer," she said. "Emergency petition to suspend all visitation. Dr. Chen's notes should be enough." "It's Saturday. You won't reach anyone until Monday." "Then I'll camp outside their house until they answer." Sarah unbuckled her seatbelt with shaking hands. "I'm done playing by rules that only protect him. I'm done watching my son suffer because the system thinks fathers deserve second chances even when they're monsters." Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to remind her about high roads and moral victories, but he'd just watched an 8-year-old invoke a safe word to escape his own father. Sometimes the high road was just another way of losing. "Okay," he said. "We fight, but we fight smart." Sarah's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Smart is my specialty." Inside the main house, Maria had prepared hot chocolate and cookies, comfort food that the kids devoured while the adults pretended everything was fine. But Marcus caught Sarah making phone calls from her study, her voice low and urgent. By dinner time, she'd assembled a legal team that included 3 different specialists, and someone described only as the fixer. "Who's the fixer?" Marcus asked when Sarah emerged from her 3rd consecutive conference call. "Someone who solves problems the legal system can't touch." Sarah's expression was unreadable. "Someone who's very good at finding information people want hidden." "Sarah, David threatened you, explicitly, in writing. He's escalating, and we both know where escalation leads." Sarah poured herself a glass of wine with hands that trembled slightly. "I won't wait for him to hurt someone. I won't be reactive anymore. I'm going to end this." There was something in her voice that made Marcus's training instincts flare. "What exactly are you planning?" "I'm planning to give my fixer 48 hours to find something, anything we can use to put David away permanently. Financial crimes, hidden assets, affairs, drug use. I don't care what it is as long as it's prosecutable." Sarah met his eyes. "And before you lecture me about ethics, remember that David threatened our children. He forfeited the right to ethical treatment when he became a terrorist." Marcus thought about Emma's light-up shoes, about Jake clutching Hopper the rabbit, about the text message promising death. And he realized Sarah was right. There were some fights you couldn't win by following rules your opponent had already abandoned. 48 hours, he agreed. "But after that we reassess. Together." Sarah nodded and disappeared back into her study, leaving Marcus alone with the uncomfortable knowledge that they were crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. That night, Marcus did something he'd never done before. He left Emma sleeping in the guest house with 2 security guards stationed outside and walked across the lawn to the main house. Sarah answered his knock wearing pajamas and exhaustion, her eyes red from crying or stress or both. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Haven't really slept since the photo." Marcus stepped inside, suddenly uncertain why he'd come. I needed to see you. Make sure you're okay." "I'm not okay. I'm furious and terrified, and so tired of being strong." Sarah closed the door behind him. "But I'm glad you're here." They ended up on her couch, Sarah curled against Marcus's good shoulder. both of them staring at the cold fireplace and trying to pretend the world wasn't falling apart. "Tell me something good," Sarah said quietly. "Tell me something that has nothing to do with David or danger or any of this." Marcus thought for a moment. Emma wants to enter the robotics competition at her new school. She's building something she calls a butterfly rescue bot. Says it'll help catch monarchs during migration season so scientists can tag them without hurting them. Sarah smiled against his chest. "That's very her." "She asked me if you could help her with the programming, said you're the smartest person she knows besides Jake." "I'd love that." Sarah's voice was soft. "I'd love all of this. The kids, the robots, the normal family moments, if we could just get past the nightmare first." "We will," Marcus promised. "One way or another, this ends soon." What he didn't say was that he was preparing for it to end violently. That he'd been running scenarios in his head where David showed up armed, where talking wasn't an option, where Marcus had to choose between his conscience and his family's safety. He'd already decided which one he'd choose. Sarah fell asleep there on the couch, her breathing evening out, her face finally peaceful. Marcus stayed awake watching her, memorizing the way the moonlight caught her hair, the way her hand rested over his heart like she was checking to make sure it still beat. At 3 a.m., his phone vibrated. A text from Reeves. "Reeves heard about the visitation disaster. Want me to handle Morrison? I know people." Marcus stared at the message for a long time. It would be so easy. One phone call. One favor from a man who'd spent 22 years learning how to make problems disappear. David Morrison could have an accident. A random mugging gone wrong. A car crash on a dark road. Marcus's finger hovered over the keyboard. Then he looked at Sarah sleeping peacefully against him. Thought about Emma asking him to teach her right from wrong, remembered Jake handing over his precious rabbit because that's what family does. Marcus. "Thanks, but no. We do this the right way." Reeves. "The right way gets good people killed." Marcus. "Then I'll die, knowing I was good." Reeves didn't respond, and Marcus wasn't sure if that meant approval or disappointment. Sunday morning brought Sarah's fixer a woman named Catherine Liu, who looked like a librarian but moved like a predator. She arrived with a laptop and an expression that suggested she'd seen humanity's worst and remained unimpressed. "I need full access to David Morrison's life," Catherine said without preamble. "Bank records, emails, phone data, social media, everything. What can you get me legally?" Sarah handed over a thick folder. His financial disclosure from the divorce, his employment records from before he was fired. Social media is public. The rest I'll acquire through methods you don't need to know about. Catherine's smile was cold. "Plausible deniability is your friend, Ms. Morrison. Trust me." She disappeared into Sarah's study and didn't emerge for 14 hours. Marcus spent the day running security drills with his team, checking camera angles, reinforcing protocols. He was in the middle of a perimeter sweep when Emma found him near the back fence. "Daddy, you're doing the worry face again." Marcus forced his features to relax. "Just working, baby girl." "You're always working now. You used to play with me more." Emma's voice was small, hurt. "Did I do something wrong?" Marcus's heart shattered. He'd been so focused on protecting his family that he'd forgotten they needed more than just safety. They needed presence, attention, love demonstrated through time rather than vigilance. "You didn't do anything wrong," Marcus said, kneeling down to her level. "And you're right. I've been working too much. So how about tomorrow we take the afternoon off, just you and me? We can go to that science museum you like, build some robots, get ice cream." Emma's face lit up. "Really? You promise?" "I promise. Nothing is more important than you." Not work, not..." Marcus stopped himself before saying, "Not keeping you safe from the bad man." "Not anything." "Can Jake come too? And Miss Sarah?" Marcus smiled. "Yeah, baby. We can all go. Like a family." "We are a family," Emma said matter-of-factly. We just need to make it official." "Official how?" Emma shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe you could marry Miss Sarah. Then Jake would be my real brother, and we could live together forever." Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought. 7-year-olds made everything sound so simple when adult reality was complicated by fear and trauma and the ever-present threat of a man who wouldn't let go. "Maybe someday," Marcus said carefully. "When things settle down. When the bad man stops being bad. Something like that." Emma hugged him tight. "I hope he stops soon. I'm tired of being scared." "Me too, baby girl. Me too." That night, Catherine emerged from Sarah's study looking satisfied in a way that made Marcus nervous. "Found something?" Sarah asked. "Found several somethings." Catherine opened her laptop. David Morrison has been conducting financial transactions that violate the terms of his bail. Specifically, he's been moving money offshore large amounts, 7 figures. And he's been doing it through shell corporations that trace back to a business partner currently under federal investigation for money laundering. Sarah leaned forward. "Can we use this?" "You can report it to his bail bondsman. He'll violate bail conditions, the bond gets revoked. David goes back to jail pending trial." Catherine's smile was sharp. "But there's more. I found communication between David and a private investigator he hired to follow you. The PI has been documenting your routines, the kids' schedules, security weaknesses." Marcus felt cold rage settle in his stomach. He's been planning something. He's been planning everything. Catherine pulled up another file. The PI's notes include observations about optimal intervention points, places where you're vulnerable, the kids' school, your corporate events. Even, she paused, even notes about Marcus's morning running route. The room went silent. "He's going to try to kill me," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. "Or incapacitate you so you can't protect Sarah." Catherine's expression was grim. "The notes suggest David sees you as the primary obstacle. Remove you, and Sarah becomes accessible." Sarah made a sound like she'd been punched. No, we're going to the police right now." "The PI's notes are privileged attorney-client communication," Catherine interrupted. "Technically inadmissible, and before you ask how I obtained them, remember plausible deniability." "So we can't use them," Marcus said. "Not in court, but you can use them to prepare." Catherine looked at Marcus with something like respect. "You're the target, Mr. Williams. How you handle that is up to you." After Catherine left, Sarah paced her study like a caged animal, her professional composure completely shattered. "We have to leave," she said. "Take the kids and disappear. I have resources. We could go somewhere David can't find us. And spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders." Marcus shook his head. "That's not living, Sarah. That's just a different kind of prison." "Then what do we do? Wait for him to make his move. Hope we're faster. We control the battlefield." Marcus pulled out his phone and started texting his security team. "If David's planning to come after me, we make it happen on our terms. We set a trap." Sarah stopped pacing. "You want to use yourself as bait. I want to end this, permanently, legally." Marcus met her eyes. "We know he's coming. We know his target. So we give him an opportunity he can't resist, me alone, vulnerable, and we document everything. The planning, the approach, the intent. And when he makes his move, we have enough evidence to put him away forever. Or he kills you, and our evidence doesn't matter." "He won't kill me. I'm trained now. I'm ready." Marcus said it with more confidence than he felt. "And I'll have backup. Reeves, Chen, Rodriguez. The entire team watching from a distance." Sarah was crying now, angry tears that she swiped away furiously. "I can't lose you. I just found you. Her voice broke. "We're supposed to have more time." Marcus crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "We will have more time. Years of it. Decades. But first, we have to survive this week." "Promise me," Sarah whispered against his chest. Promise me you'll come back." "I promise," Marcus said, and hoped he wasn't lying. The plan came together over the next 48 hours. Marcus would resume his morning running routine, the one the private investigator had documented. He'd run the same route the same time, creating a pattern David couldn't resist exploiting. The security team would maintain visual contact from a distance close enough to intervene, but far enough to avoid spooking their target. "You'll be wearing a wire," Reeves said, fitting Marcus with equipment that looked like something from a spy movie. "Voice activated. Everything David says gets recorded. Everything you say is broadcast to the team in real time." "What if he just shoots me?" Marcus asked. "No talking, just—" He made a gun gesture. "Then you duck, and we come in hot." Reeves's expression was grim. But Morrison's not a Soldier Williams. He's a rage case. He'll want to talk, want to explain, want you to understand why he's about to kill you. That's when we get him. Marcus nodded, trying to ignore the fear clawing at his chest. The night before the operation, Marcus sat with Emma in her room, reading her favorite book about butterflies. She'd asked him to read it 4 times, clearly sensing something was wrong, clearly trying to keep him close. "Daddy, are you going away?" she asked when he finally closed the book. "Just for my morning run, baby. I'll be back before you wake up." "But what if you're not?" Emma's eyes were too wise, too full of knowledge about how quickly people could disappear. "What if something bad happens, like in the parking garage?" Marcus set the book aside and pulled his daughter close. "Nothing bad is going to happen. I'm stronger now, smarter, and I have a whole team of people watching out for me." "Then why does Miss Sarah look so sad?" Children saw everything Marcus thought, every emotion adults tried to hide. "Because she loves me," Marcus said honestly. "And when you love someone, you worry about them. But that's okay. That's how love works." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you love Miss Sarah?" "Yeah, baby girl. I do." "Are you going to marry her?" "Maybe. If she'll have me. If—" Marcus stopped himself before saying, "If I survive tomorrow." "She'll say yes," Emma said with absolute certainty. "And then we'll be a real family forever and ever, and the bad man will be gone, and we can just be happy." Marcus kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, memorizing this moment in case it was the last quiet one they'd have. "Forever and ever," he echoed. "I promise." After Emma fell asleep, Marcus found Sarah in the main house, looking at photo albums from before her life became complicated. Pictures of her and David when they were young and in love, before money and ego poisoned everything. Pictures of Jake as a baby, his father holding him with an expression of pure wonder that seemed impossible now. "He used to be different," Sarah said quietly. "Or maybe I just didn't see who he really was." Marcus sat beside her. "People change. Sometimes trauma breaks them. Sometimes power corrupts them. It's not your fault. It feels like my fault. I chose him. I married him. I gave him a son." Sarah closed the album. "And now that son is terrified of his own father because I didn't see the monster coming. You're not responsible for David's choices. Only your own." Marcus took her hand. "And you've chosen to protect Jake, to build a better life, to fight for something good. By using my bodyguard as bait to trap my ex-husband." Sarah laughed bitterly. "I'm not sure that qualifies as good." "It qualifies as necessary." Marcus turned to face her fully. "Sarah, tomorrow morning when I go out there, if something goes wrong—" "Don't." Sarah's voice was sharp. "Don't you dare say goodbye." "I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying I love you, and I want to marry you, and I want to raise our kids together and argue about whose turn it is to do dishes and grow old watching Emma and Jake become amazing humans." Marcus pulled a small box from his pocket, something he'd bought 3 days ago, hidden in his sock drawer, waiting for the right moment that might never come. "I'm saying yes to Forever Sarah Morrison, if you'll have me." Sarah stared at the ring, Simple, elegant, probably not expensive enough for a billionaire CEO, but bought with money Marcus had earned honestly through work that mattered. "You're proposing the night before you might die," she said, but she was crying again, and this time the tears looked like joy mixed with terror. "I'm proposing because I might die, because I refuse to waste another second pretending we're not building something permanent." Marcus opened the box. "Marry me. Not someday, not when things settle down. Now. Today. Before I go running tomorrow. Before David gets another chance to take this away from us." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, and Marcus saw her making the same calculation he'd made, that love in the face of danger was either the bravest or most foolish thing humans did. And sometimes it was both. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, and Sarah kissed him like she was trying to memorize the taste of hope. They woke up Judge Patterson at midnight, a family friend of Sarah's, who owed her numerous favors, and got married in Sarah's living room with Emma and Jake as witnesses. The kids were confused but delighted, still in their pajamas, holding hands and giggling through the brief ceremony. Maria cried. The security guards pretended not to notice. And Marcus stood there in jeans and a t-shirt, promising to love and cherish a woman he'd known for 3 months, but would die protecting. "You may kiss your bride," Judge Patterson said with a smile that suggested she'd married stranger couples in stranger circumstances. Marcus kissed his wife and Emma, and Jake cheered, and for one perfect moment, the world was exactly as it should be. "We're a real family now," Emma announced. "Official and everything." "Official and everything," Sarah agreed, and Marcus saw her looking at him with an expression that said, "You better come back from that run tomorrow, because I just married you." Marcus fully intended to come back. At 5 a.m. he woke to pre-dawn darkness and the weight of everything he had to lose. Sarah was already awake beside him. They'd spent their wedding night tangled together in her bed, making love like it might be the last time, holding each other through the small hours. "I'm terrified," Sarah admitted as Marcus dressed in running clothes. "Me too." Marcus checked his gun, concealed in a running belt, loaded safety on. "But we end this today, one way or another." Reeves and the team were already in position when Marcus stepped outside. The wire was working, transmitting his breathing to 5 different vehicles scattered along his route. Chen was in a van disguised as a plumber's truck. Rodriguez was jogging a parallel route. 2 more guards were positioned at strategic points. And somewhere out there, if Catherine's intelligence was correct, David Morrison was waiting with a plan and a weapon and nothing left to lose. Marcus started running. The first mile was uneventful. Marcus maintained his usual pace, his usual route, trying to look like a man who didn't know he was being hunted. The second mile brought him into Memorial Park, where trees provided cover and early morning joggers created camouflage for anyone watching. "Movement at your 3 o'clock. Reeves's voice crackled in Marcus's earpiece. "Blue sedan, parked, driver inside." Marcus didn't break stride, didn't look, just kept running like he hadn't heard anything. "Sedan's following," Rodriguez reported. "Staying back about 50 yards, male driver. Can't confirm identity yet." Marcus's heart was pounding now, and not from exertion. This was it. David had taken the bait. The route led toward a stretch of trail that ran through dense trees, a perfect ambush point. Marcus had chosen it specifically, had positioned his team to converge if things went wrong. Now, he just had to trust that they were fast enough. "He's accelerating," Chen said. "Getting closer, 20 yards, 15. Marcus heard the car before he saw it, engine revving, tires on gravel. He turned just as the blue sedan jumped the curb and came straight at him. Training took over. Marcus dove left, rolling, coming up with his gun drawn. The sedan screeched to a stop, and David Morrison emerged, and he was holding something that made Marcus's blood freeze. Not a gun. A knife. The same knife from the parking garage, or maybe a twin gleaming in the dawn light. "You ruined everything!" David screamed, and his face was a mask of rage and desperation. "My wife, my son, my life. You took it all." David put the knife down. Marcus kept his gun trained but didn't fire. Not yet. They needed this on camera, needed David to confess. This isn't the way. You don't get to tell me what's the right way. David was advancing, knife raised. You're nobody, a construction worker playing hero. You don't deserve her. You don't deserve my son calling you dad. Jake doesn't call me dad, Marcus said, backing up, maintaining distance. He calls me Marcus, and he's terrified of you because you pointed a gun at his mother. I was trying to get her attention, trying to make her see that we belong together. David's voice cracked. But she chose you. Some poor nobody with a hero complex. She chose you over her own husband. Ex-husband, Marcus corrected. And she didn't choose me because I'm a hero. She chose me because I don't terrify her. David lunged. Marcus fired. The shot went wide intentionally. Marcus wasn't trying to kill David. He was trying to stop him, to give the team time to converge to end this without anyone dying. But David was faster than expected, rage making him reckless and quick. The knife caught Marcus across the ribs, shallow, painful, but not fatal. Marcus dropped his gun and went for hand-to-hand, using techniques Rodriguez had drilled into him 1,000 times. Block, strike, disarm, incapacitate without killing. They grappled in the dirt, both of them grunting with effort, the knife dancing between them like a terrible prize. Marcus got a hand on David's wrist, twisted, heard something crack. David screamed and dropped the knife. Then Reeves was there, and Chen and Rodriguez, all of them swarming David Morrison like a tactical unit, getting him on the ground, cuffing him, reading him rights, while he screamed about injustice and betrayal. You okay? Reeves asked Marcus, who was sitting in the dirt, bleeding from his ribs and trying to remember how to breathe. Yeah, I'm good. We got him. On camera. On audio. Assault with a deadly weapon. Attempted murder. He's done, Williams. This time, for good. Marcus let himself collapse backward onto the grass, staring up at the sky that was just beginning to lighten, and laughed. Actually laughed. Because he was alive, and David Morrison was in handcuffs, and his family was safe. His family. Sarah met him at the hospital, déjà vu all over again, with Emma and Jake both crying and trying to hug him simultaneously. The cut on his ribs required 16 stitches, but nothing vital was damaged. Marcus would heal. They would all heal. You promised? Sarah said, her hand tight in his. You promised you'd come back. I keep my promises. Marcus kissed her, tasting salt from her tears. Especially to my wife. Emma and Jake both squealed at the word wife, apparently just processing that their late-night wedding meant Sarah and Marcus were actually married now. Does this mean Marcus is my stepdad? Jake asked. If that's okay with you. Marcus said carefully. Jake thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. Yeah, that's okay. You're way better at being a dad than... He stopped himself. Than some people. Emma hugged Jake. I told you we'd be a real family. 3 weeks later, Detective Garcia called with news that David Morrison had been denied bail, had been charged with multiple felonies, including attempted murder, and was looking at a minimum of 15 years in prison based on the evidence Catherine had legally obtained and the assault captured on camera. His lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity, Garcia said. But the premeditation was too clear. The PI's notes, the planning, the ambush. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was calculated. Good, Sarah said. She was sitting in Marcus's lap in her study, both of them on a conference call that felt like the closing of a chapter. And the civil case. Morrison's assets are being frozen pending fraud investigation. Between the offshore accounts and the money laundering connections, he's financially ruined. Garcia's voice carried satisfaction. He came after your family, Sarah. Now he's lost everything. Seems like justice to me. After they hung up, Sarah was quiet for a long time. Do you think Jake will ever forgive me? She finally asked. For having a father like David. For putting him through all of this. Marcus turned her to face him. Jake doesn't need to forgive you because you didn't do anything wrong. You left an abusive husband. You protected your son. You built a new life. That's not something to apologize for. I just want him to be happy. Both of them. All of us. Then let's focus on that. On being happy. On building something good. And they did. Over the following months, the Morrison-Williams household became something beautiful. Emma and Jake thrived as siblings, their bond deepening into the kind of friendship that would last a lifetime. Emma's butterfly rescue bot won third place at the robotics competition, and Jake's science fair project on renewable energy took first. They celebrated with ice cream and terrible singing, and the kind of chaos that comes from a house full of love. Sarah threw herself into philanthropy, using her company's resources to fund programs for domestic violence survivors, to provide legal assistance for women escaping dangerous marriages, to create safe spaces for children traumatized by family violence. She turned her pain into purpose, and Marcus fell more in love with her every day. Marcus himself became something unexpected, not just a bodyguard, but a mentor. He started a program training other men in executive protection, specifically recruiting from construction sites and blue-collar backgrounds, proving that heroes came from everywhere. Reeves helped him build the curriculum. Chen taught tactical analysis. Rodriguez handled combat training. And every morning, Marcus woke up in a house he owned, with a family he'd built and a life he'd earned, and thought about the man he'd been 3 months ago bleeding out on a parking garage floor. That man had been surviving. This man was living. 1 year after David Morrison went to prison, Marcus and Sarah had their official wedding, the big one with flowers and hundreds of guests, and Emma as flower girl and Jake as ring bearer. They exchanged vows. They'd written themselves promises about second chances and chosen families and love that survives trauma. "I thought I'd lost everything when you got shot," Sarah said during her vows, tears streaming down her face. "But I'd actually found everything. I found someone who would die to protect strangers, who would risk everything for nothing in return, who taught me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing we do." Marcus's own vows were simpler. "You gave me a reason to be more than I was. You saw potential in the guy with $47 and a hero complex. You trusted me with your life, your son, your future. And I promise to spend every day earning that trust. To be the man Emma thinks I am. The father Jake deserves. The husband you need me to be." There wasn't a dry eye in the venue. At the reception, Emma and Jake gave a joint speech that was mostly them arguing about who loved Marcus more and who had known Sarah would marry him first. They settled on it being a tie, which seemed appropriate for siblings. Reeves showed up in dress uniform and made everyone uncomfortable by being emotional. "Williams was the worst student I ever had," he announced to the crowd. "Couldn't follow orders, too stubborn, too much heart, and he became one of the best men I know. So here's to Marcus and Sarah. May they build something that lasts." They raised their glasses, and Marcus thought about foundations and futures, about buildings that stood because they were built on solid ground. Later that night, after the reception ended, and the guests went home, and the kids were asleep in their rooms, Marcus and Sarah stood on their porch, watching fireflies drift through the magnolia trees. "Think we'll ever have a boring life?" Sarah asked. "God, I hope not." Marcus pulled her close. "But maybe we can have a peaceful one." "Peaceful sounds good." They stood there in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and built something beautiful anyway. Emma's light-up shoes were by the door. Jake's soccer ball was in the yard. Hopper the rabbit sat on the porch swing, forgotten but cherished. And somewhere in Houston, in a house that was finally home, a family slept peacefully, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys, but they'd face them together. Because that's what families did. They protected each other. They loved each other. They survived together. And sometimes, if they were very lucky, they got to be happy too. Marcus kissed his wife under a sky full of stars and felt something he hadn't felt in 7 years, the absolute certainty that everything was going to be okay. Not perfect, not without struggle, but okay. And okay, Marcus had learned, was another word for blessed. He thought about the parking garage one last time, the gun, the bullet, the blood. Thought about the choice he'd made to step between danger and a stranger. It had cost him pain and fear and nearly his life, but it had given him everything. Sarah, Emma, Jake. A family bound not by blood, but by choice and courage, and the stubborn refusal to let trauma win. Thank you, Marcus whispered to the universe, to whatever force had put him in that garage at exactly the right moment. Thank you for letting me be the hero this time. And the universe, if it was listening, whispered back through the rustling magnolia leaves and the distant sound of children's laughter, "You always were." Marcus Williams had spent his whole life trying to be good enough, strong enough, worthy enough. It turned out he'd been enough all along. He just needed someone to show him. And Sarah Morrison, brilliant, fierce, broken, and healed and willing to love again, had done exactly that. Together they'd built a life from the ashes of trauma. A family from the fragments of broken homes. A future from the scattered pieces of painful pasts. And it was beautiful. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, Miss Sarah, I had a dream about butterflies. Can we go see the monarchs tomorrow?" Marcus and Sarah exchanged a look, the kind of look that married couples develop a whole conversation in a glance. "Yeah, baby girl," Marcus said. "We can see the butterflies tomorrow. All of us, as a family." Emma smiled and went back to bed, satisfied, safe, loved. And Marcus stood there with his wife under a sky full of possibilities, grateful for second chances and new beginnings, for the courage to step between a bullet and a stranger, for the grace to accept help when he needed it most. The night was warm. The fireflies danced. And somewhere in the distance, a butterfly landed on a magnolia blossom, its wings catching the moonlight, a reminder that transformation was always possible, that broken things could heal, that love was worth fighting for, that heroes came from parking garages and construction sites and anywhere people chose to be brave, and that sometimes, just sometimes, Thursday mornings led to forever. Marcus kissed his wife one more time, then they walked inside together, turning off the porch light, locking the door, heading upstairs to where their children slept. Their family, their home, their hard-won, beautiful, perfectly imperfect life. And if anyone had told Marcus a year ago that he'd end up here married to a billionaire CEO, raising two incredible kids, running a successful security company, living in a house with magnolia trees and fireflies, he would have said they were crazy. But crazy was just another word for miraculous. And Marcus Williams had learned to believe in miracles, because he was living one every single day. The end.